Hello, horror lover. Are you ready for a long night of nightmares? Before we begin, I want to ask you to subscribe to the channel, and especially leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I'd love to know. Click the like button, all of this because the soft glow of my laptop screen illuminated my face in the darkness of my Atlanta apartment. It was well past midnight, but sleep eluded me as it often did these days. I scrolled mindlessly through my social media feed, my eyes heavy with exhaustion, but my mind refusing to quiet down. That's when I saw it. A friend request that made my heart stop and my breath catch in my throat. Sarah Martinez. My cursor hovered over her name, my hand trembling slightly. It couldn't be. Sarah, my best friend from high school, had died in a car accident 5 years ago. I still remembered the funeral, the tears, the overwhelming sense of loss that had haunted me for months afterward. This has to be a mistake, I whispered to myself, my voice sounding unnaturally loud in the quiet room. I clicked on the profile, and my confusion only deepened. There she was, Sarah's familiar smile beaming at me from her profile picture. But it wasn't an old photo. She looked older, her hair styled differently than I'd ever seen it. Recent posts filled her timeline. Pictures at a beach I didn't recognize, status updates about a new job, likes and comments on other people's posts, all dated within the last few months. What the hell is going on? I muttered, scrolling frantically through the profile. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, making me jump. It was a text from my roommate, Jen. Jen, you still up? I can hear you talking to yourself. I hesitated for a moment before replying. Me. Yeah, sorry. Come here for a sec. You need to see this. A minute later, Jen appeared in my doorway, her red hair a mess and her eyes squinting against the light from my laptop. This better be good, Rach. It's 2 a.m., she grumbled. I waved her over urgently. Look at this, tell me I'm not going crazy. Jen leaned over my shoulder, her eyes widening as she took in Sarah's profile. Wait, isn't that Sarah? I finished for her. My best friend from high school, the one who died 5 years ago. Jen straightened up, running a hand through her hair. Okay, this is weird. Like, really weird. Could it be a fake profile? I shook my head. Maybe, but why? And how would they have all these recent photos? Have you tried messaging her? Jen asked. The thought hadn't even occurred to me. My finger hovered over the message button, but something held me back. I don't know if I can. Jen squeezed my shoulder. Want me to do it? I nodded, grateful for her support. Jen leaned over and typed out a quick message. Hi, Sarah. This is Jen, Rachel's roommate. We're a bit confused by your profile. Could you give us a call when you get a chance? We waited in tense silence for a few minutes, but no response came. Maybe we should try calling her family, I suggested, my voice shaky. They might know what's going on. Jen nodded. Good idea. But maybe wait until morning? It's pretty late. I glanced at the clock and sighed. You're right. I'm sorry I woke you up. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It's okay, Jen said, giving me a sympathetic smile. Try to get some sleep, all right? We'll figure this out in the morning. But sleep was the furthest thing from my mind. After Jen went back to her room, I spent hours poring over Sarah's profile, searching for any clue that might explain this impossible situation. Every post, every photo, every interaction seemed so real, so authentically Sarah. It was as if she had never died, but instead had gone on living a life I knew nothing about. As the first light of dawn began to filter through my curtains, I finally worked up the courage to call Sarah's mother, Mrs. Martinez. My hand shook as I dialed the number, praying it was still the same after all these years. The phone rang 3 times before a groggy voice answered. Hello? Mrs. Martinez? I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It's Rachel. Rachel Thompson. I'm sorry to call so early, but... Rachel. Mrs. Martinez sounded more alert now. It's been so long. Is everything all right? I took a deep breath. I'm not sure. I saw something online last night. A profile. It looks like Sarah's, but it's active. Recent. I know this sounds crazy, but I had to ask. Is there any chance? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Mrs. Martinez spoke again, her voice was thick with emotion. Oh, Rachel, I'm so sorry you had to see that. We've been trying to get it taken down for weeks. My heart sank. So it's not real? No, sweetheart, it's not real. Mrs. Martinez's voice cracked. Someone's been using Sarah's photos, her information. The police say it's some kind of scam, but they haven't been able to trace it yet. I felt a mix of relief and renewed grief wash over me. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Martinez. I can't imagine how hard this must be for you. It's like losing her all over again, she admitted. Seeing her face, reading words we know she didn't write. It's cruel. Whoever's doing this, they have no idea the pain they're causing. We talked for a few more minutes, Mrs. Martinez filling me in on the little they knew about the fake profile. As we said our goodbyes, I promised to let her know if I discovered anything else. I sat in silence for a long time after hanging up, emotions swirling inside me. Relief that I hadn't somehow missed the miracle of my best friend coming back to life. Anger at whoever was using her memory this way. And a deep aching sadness as I relived the pain of losing Sarah. Just as I was about to close my laptop and try to get some sleep, a notification popped up. Another friend request. My blood ran cold as I read the name. Dr. Alan Brenner, my college professor, who had died of a heart attack 2 years ago. No, I whispered, my mind reeling. This can't be happening. But there it was, clear as day. Another friend request from beyond the grave. As I stared at the screen, a terrifying realization began to dawn on me. This wasn't just a cruel prank or a random scam. This was something bigger, something targeted. Someone out there was resurrecting the dead, at least in the digital world. And for some reason, they had set their sights on me. As the sun rose over Atlanta, casting long shadows across my room, I made a decision. I wouldn't just report these profiles and try to forget about them. I needed to understand what was happening, to stop it if I could. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything I thought I knew about life, death, and the digital world that connected us all. I reached for my phone, my hands steadier now, driven by a new sense of purpose. Jen, I called out loud enough for my roommate to hear. We need to talk. I think I've stumbled onto something big, and I'm going to need your help to figure it out. As I waited for Jen to appear, I turned back to my laptop, staring at the 2 friend requests that had turned my world upside down. Whatever was going on, whoever was behind this, I was determined to uncover the truth. For Sarah, for Dr. Brenner, and for all the others who might be exploited in this macabre digital resurrection. The game was on, and I was ready to play. The harsh glare of my laptop screen pierced the darkness of my room, casting an eerie blue glow across my face. It was 3 a.m., and I hadn't slept in what felt like days. My eyes burned, but I couldn't tear them away from the screen. I was about to do something that went against every instinct I had. Are you sure about this, Rachel? Jen's voice came from behind me, laced with concern. I nodded, not trusting my voice. My cursor hovered over the Create Account button on the social media site. I had spent hours crafting a fake profile, Amanda Lewis, 28, graphic designer from Columbus, Ohio, a woman who didn't exist but who was about to become my digital alter ego. It feels wrong, I muttered, my finger trembling over the mouse. Like I'm violating their memory somehow. Jen squeezed my shoulder. I know, but if we're going to figure out what's going on, we need to see what these ghosts are up to. I took a deep breath and clicked. The profile sprang to life, empty and waiting to be filled with a fictional life. Okay, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Here goes nothing. With shaking hands, I navigated to Sarah's profile and sent a friend request, then to Dr. Brenner's. The waiting was excruciating. How long do you think it'll take? Jen asked, perching on the edge of my bed. I shrugged. No idea. Could be minutes. Could be... A notification popped up. Friend request accepted. Then another. That was fast, Jen whispered, leaning in closer. I clicked on Sarah's profile first. My heart clenched as I scrolled through her timeline, seeing posts and photos that seemed so real, so Sarah. But there were inconsistencies, references to places she'd never been, people she'd never met. Look at this, I said, pointing to a post about a trip to Bali. Sarah was terrified of flying. She never would have gone to Bali. Jen nodded. And here, she's talking about her job as a marketing executive. Wasn't she studying to be a teacher? Yeah, I said, my voice thick with emotion. She wanted to teach kindergarten. As we delved deeper, a pattern emerged. The profiles were meticulously crafted, but they were filled with generic life events and vague status updates. Nothing too specific, nothing that could be easily disproven. It's like they're creating a whole new life for her, Jen mused. But why? Before I could respond, a message notification popped up. It was from Sarah's account. Hey Amanda, thanks for the friend request. How do you know Sarah? I froze, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. What do I say? I whispered to Jen. Keep it vague, she advised. Say you met at a conference or something. I nodded and typed out a response. Hi. We met at a marketing conference in Chicago last year. Hit it off right away. The reply came almost instantly. Oh yeah, I remember. How have you been? My stomach churned. This wasn't just a bot or some automated system. There was a real person on the other end, pretending to be my dead best friend. I can't do this, I said, pushing away from the desk. This is sick. Jen caught my arm. Rachel, wait. I know it's hard, but we need to keep going. We need to understand what they're after. I took a shaky breath and nodded. For the next few hours, we engaged in conversation with Sarah and Dr. Brenner. It was surreal, like talking to ghosts who didn't know they were dead. As dawn broke, casting a pale light through my curtains, we had gathered pages of notes, but were no closer to understanding the purpose behind these fake profiles. We need help, I said, rubbing my tired eyes. Someone who knows about this kind of thing. Jen nodded. What about that detective you mentioned? The one who helped with the identity theft case at your old job? I hesitated. Detective Mark Simmons had been helpful before, but this was different. This was bizarre, potentially unbelievable. It's worth a shot, I finally said, reaching for my phone. The call went to voicemail. I left a message trying to sound calm and rational despite the absurdity of what I was saying. Detective Simmons, this is Rachel Thompson. I need your help with something unusual. I've discovered some social media profiles of people I know to be deceased, but they're active and being managed by someone. I think it might be part of a larger scam or identity theft ring. Please call me back as soon as you can. I hung up, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. Now we wait, I guess. But waiting was torture. Every notification made me jump, wondering if it was the detective or another message from the digital ghosts haunting my screen. It was nearly noon when my phone finally rang. I snatched it up, my heart racing. Detective Simmons? Rachel, his gruff voice came through the speaker. Got your message. Sounds like you've got yourself in a bit of a situation. I launched into an explanation, trying to convey the gravity of what we'd discovered without sounding completely unhinged. As I spoke, I could almost feel the skepticism radiating through the phone. When I finished, there was a long pause. Rachel, Simmons finally said, his tone measured. Are you sure you're not overreacting? Fake profiles are unfortunately common. It's distasteful, sure, but not necessarily criminal. But detective, I protested, this is different. These aren't just fake profiles. They're impersonating specific dead people, my dead friends. And they're interactive, responsive. Someone is actively managing them. Another pause. Look, Rachel, I understand this is upsetting, but unless there's evidence of actual fraud or financial crimes, there's not much we can do. Have you reported the profiles to the social media company? I felt a wave of frustration wash over me. Of course I have, but that's not the point. Don't you see? This is organized, targeted. It's not just random trolls. I'm sorry, Rachel, Simmons said, his voice softening slightly. Without more concrete evidence, my hands are tied. Keep documenting everything, and if you see any signs of actual criminal activity, let me know. But for now, I'd advise you to step away from this. It's clearly causing you distress. The call ended, leaving me feeling more alone and frightened than ever. Jen, who had been listening, gave me a sympathetic look. He didn't believe you, she said. It wasn't a question. I shook my head, fighting back tears of frustration. No, he thinks I'm overreacting. Maybe I am. Maybe we both are. Jen sat down next to me, her face set in determination. No, we're not. There's something going on here, Rachel, and if the police won't help, we'll figure it out ourselves. As if on cue, my laptop chimed. A new message, from Sarah's account. My blood ran cold as I read it aloud. Help me, Rachel. I'm trapped. Jen and I exchanged shocked glances. How did they know? I whispered. I don't know, Jen said, her voice tight with fear. But I think we just got in way over our heads. I stared at the message, my mind racing. This wasn't just a scam anymore. This was something darker, more sinister, and somehow they knew who I really was. What do we do now? Jen asked, her earlier bravado fading. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. We keep digging. We find out who's behind this and we stop them, whatever it takes. As I typed out a response to the mysterious message, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were standing on the edge of a rabbit hole, about to plunge into depths we couldn't even imagine. But there was no turning back now. The game had changed, and the stakes were higher than ever. We're coming for you, I whispered to the screen, to whoever was watching from the other side. And we're going to end this. Little did I know, our determination to uncover the truth would lead us down a path fraught with danger, deception, and discoveries that would shake the very foundation of our digital world. The rabbit hole was deep, and we were just beginning our descent. The gentle hum of my laptop fan was the only sound in my dimly lit apartment. It was 2 a.m., and I was hunched over my desk, my eyes bloodshot from staring at the screen for hours. Scattered around me were empty coffee cups and crumpled sheets of paper covered in scribbled notes. There has to be a pattern, I muttered to myself, scrolling through yet another obituary. For the past week, Jen and I had been diving deep into the rabbit hole of these mysterious profiles. We'd created a spreadsheet of every resurrected account we could find, cross-referencing them with recent obituaries. The work was grueling and emotionally draining, but we were starting to see connections. My phone buzzed, startling me out of my focused trance. It was Jen. Rachel? Her voice was urgent. I think I found something. Can you come over? 20 minutes later, I was at Jen's place, my laptop tucked under my arm. She ushered me in, her red hair a mess and dark circles under her eyes mirroring my own exhaustion. Look at this, she said, pointing to her computer screen. I leaned in, squinting at the local news article she had pulled up. The headline read, "Local family scammed by deceased relative's Facebook account." Holy shit, I breathed, quickly scanning the article. It detailed how a family in suburban Atlanta had been contacted by what they thought was their recently deceased grandmother's Facebook account. The grandmother claimed to be stuck in a foreign country and needed money to get home. This is it, Jen said, her voice a mix of excitement and dread. This is what they're doing with the accounts. I nodded, my mind racing. They're using the emotional connection to scam people. But how are they choosing their targets? We spent the next few hours digging deeper, finding more cases of similar scams across the country. Each one followed a similar pattern. A deceased person's account would suddenly become active, reach out to family and friends, and eventually ask for money under various pretenses. As the sun began to rise, casting a pale light through Jen's curtains, we sat back, overwhelmed by what we had uncovered. "We need to take this to the police," Jen said, rubbing her tired eyes. I hesitated, remembering Detective Simmons' dismissive response. They didn't believe me before, but maybe with all this evidence. I reached for my phone, my hand shaking slightly as I dialed Simmons' number. It rang several times before going to voicemail. "Detective Simmons," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's Rachel Thompson again. I have new information about those fake profiles. It's not just identity theft. It's an organized scam targeting grieving families. Please call me back as soon as you can. This is urgent." I hung up, feeling a mix of determination and frustration. "Now we wait," I sighed. But waiting was never my strong suit. As Jen dozed off on the couch, I continued to dig, following digital breadcrumbs and connecting dots. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. "Jen," I said, shaking her awake. "Jen, wake up. Look at this." She blinked groggily, focusing on my screen. "What am I looking at?" "Obituaries," I said, pointing to a series of highlighted names. "All of these people died within the last month. And look, they all have active Facebook profiles now." Jen's eyes widened as she realized what I was implying. "They're using recent deaths to create new fake accounts." I nodded grimly. "They're probably monitoring obituaries, creating profiles as soon as someone dies, before the family even thinks to memorialize the account." That's sick," Jen whispered, her face pale. Just then my phone rang, making us both jump. It was Detective Simmons. "Rachel," his gruff voice came through the speaker. "I got your message. You said you have evidence?" I quickly put the phone on speaker and launched into an explanation, detailing everything we had discovered. As I spoke, I could hear the skepticism in Simmons' voice slowly give way to concern. "Send me everything you've got," he said when I finished. "And Rachel, be careful. If what you're saying is true, you might have stumbled onto something big." After I hung up, Jen and I looked at each other, the weight of the situation settling over us. "What now?" Jen asked. I took a deep breath. "Now, we compile everything and send it to Simmons, and then we keep digging." For the next few hours, we worked tirelessly, organizing our findings into a coherent report. Just as I was about to hit send, a notification popped up on my screen. Another message from Sarah's account. My hand trembled as I clicked to open it. The message was short, but it sent a chill down my spine. "Stop digging or you'll be next." Jen gasped. "Rachel, they know. They know what we're doing." I stared at the screen, my mind racing. How could they know? Had they somehow hacked my computer? Were they watching us right now? "We can't stop," I said, my voice shaking but determined. "We're too close. We have to see this through." Jen nodded, though I could see the fear in her eyes. "What's our next move?" I thought for a moment, then turned back to my computer. "We need to draw them out. Make them think we're backing off, then set a trap." Over the next hour, we crafted a careful response to the threatening message, feigning fear and promising to stop our investigation. Then we created a new fake profile, this time for a wealthy, recently deceased businessman. "If they take the bait," I explained to Jen, "we might be able to trace their activities, maybe even identify some of the people involved." As we worked, the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across Jen's living room. We were exhausted, running on nothing but coffee and determination, but we couldn't stop now. Suddenly my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My heart raced as I read it aloud. "You think you're clever, don't you? Playing with the dead. But you have no idea what you're dealing with. This is your last warning. Walk away, or join your friend Sarah." Jen's face went pale. "Rachel, this is getting dangerous. Maybe we should stop, let the police handle it." I shook my head, a mix of fear and determination coursing through me. "We can't stop now. We're close to something big. I can feel it. Besides, if we back off, they win. They keep scamming people, using the memories of the dead to prey on the living. We have to stop them. Jen hesitated, then nodded. You're right. But we need to be smart about this. No more late nights alone. We stick together, and we tell someone else what we're doing. Just in case. I agreed. And we spent the next hour setting up safeguards, sharing our findings with a trusted friend, setting up automatic emails to be sent if we didn't check in daily, even installing security cameras in our apartments. As night fell once again, we sat in Jen's living room, surrounded by the digital ghosts we'd been chasing and the very real danger we now faced. Whatever happens, I said, looking Jen in the eye, we're in this together. We're going to uncover the truth and put an end to this sick game. Jen reached out and squeezed my hand. Together, she agreed. As we turned back to our computers, ready to dive even deeper into the twisted world we'd uncovered, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were standing on the precipice of something much bigger and more dangerous than we could have ever imagined. But there was no turning back now. The game was on, and the stakes were life and death. Little did we know, our determination to uncover the truth would lead us down a path that would challenge not just our safety, but our understanding of life, death, and the digital world that connected them. The scam we'd unveiled was just the tip of the iceberg, and we were about to plunge into icy, treacherous waters. The rhythmic tapping of my fingers on the keyboard filled the tense silence of the small, dimly lit room. Detective Simmons leaned against the wall, his weathered face etched with concern as he watched me work. Jen paced nervously behind us, her footsteps echoing off the bare walls of the police station's computer lab. Are you sure about this, Rachel? Simmons asked, his gruff voice tinged with worry. These people have already threatened you. This could be dangerous. I paused, my hands hovering over the keys. I'm sure, Detective. We've come too far to back down now. Jen stopped pacing and placed a supportive hand on my shoulder. We're in this together, remember? I nodded, grateful for her unwavering support, and turned back to the screen. We had spent the last week coordinating with Detective Simmons, planning our next move. Now it was time to put our plan into action. Okay, I said, taking a deep breath. I'm going in. I logged into the fake profile we had created, Thomas Blackwell, a wealthy businessman who had died just days ago. We had carefully crafted his digital footprint, making him the perfect target for our scammers. Almost immediately, a friend request popped up. It was from an account we had identified as part of the scammers' network. They took the bait, Jen whispered, leaning in closer. I accepted the request, and within minutes a message arrived. Mr. Blackwell, I'm so sorry for the confusion. There's been a terrible mistake with your accounts. We need to speak urgently to sort this out. Can you call this number? Simmons nodded to a technician in the corner who began tracing the provided phone number. Remember, Simmons said, his voice low and serious. Stick to the script. We need to keep them on the line long enough to trace the call. My hands shook slightly as I dialed the number. A woman with a soft, sympathetic voice answered. Mr. Blackwell? Thank goodness you've called. I'm Sarah from Eternal Digital Services. We've been trying to reach you about your accounts. I slipped into character, pitching my voice lower. My accounts? What's going on? Mr. Blackwell, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but according to our records, you're deceased. There's been a terrible mix-up, and we need to sort it out immediately to prevent any further complications with your finances. I feigned shock and outrage, following the script we had carefully prepared. Deceased? That's absurd. I'm very much alive. Of course you are, sir. That's why we need to act quickly. We'll need to verify some information and then transfer your accounts to our secure server to protect them. As the woman spoke, I could see the technician giving Simmons a thumbs up. They were making progress on the trace. I don't understand, I said, stalling for time. How could this have happened? The woman's voice took on a more urgent tone. Mr. Blackwell, I know this is confusing, but we really must act quickly. Your accounts are vulnerable right now. If you could just verify your social security number and banking details, we can secure everything for you. I hesitated, playing the part of a confused and worried victim. I'm not sure I'm comfortable giving out that information over the phone. I understand your concern, sir, but I assure you, this is a matter of utmost urgency. If we don't secure your accounts now, you risk losing everything. As she spoke, I saw Simmons nod. They had the trace. Actually, I said, my voice hardening, I think you're the one who's about to lose everything. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then, who is this? What's going on? This is Rachel Thompson, I said, adrenaline surging through me. And we know all about your scam. The police are tracing this call right now. The line went dead. Simmons sprang into action, barking orders into his radio. We've got a location. All units converge on 1845 Oakwood Avenue. Approach with caution. Suspects may be armed. As Simmons rushed out, Jen and I exchanged a look of nervous excitement. We did it, she whispered. But our elation was short-lived. Just minutes later, Simmons returned, his face grim. They're gone, he said. Cleared out. Must have had a warning system in place. My heart sank. So that's it? They got away? Simmons shook his head. Not quite. We found something. Come with me. He led us to an evidence room where several officers were cataloging items seized from the apartment. Laptops, phones, and stacks of documents covered every surface. Look at this, Simmons said, handing me a file. I opened it and gasped. Inside were detailed profiles of dozens of people, all recently deceased. Each profile contained personal information, family connections, and potential pressure points for scamming. This is bigger than we thought, I murmured, flipping through the pages. Jen leaned in, her eyes widening as she read over my shoulder. Rachel, look at this. There's a pattern to the victims they're choosing. She was right. As we examined the profiles, a clear pattern emerged. The targets were all wealthy, with large extended families and complex financial situations. They're not just going after random obituaries, I realized. They're carefully selecting their victims for maximum payout. Simmons nodded grimly. And that's not all. We found evidence linking this operation to similar scams in 3 other states. This is organized crime, on a scale we've never seen before in this type of fraud. As the implications of what we'd uncovered sank in, a chill ran down my spine. We weren't just dealing with a few opportunistic scammers. This was a sophisticated, wide-reaching criminal enterprise. What now? Jen asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Simmons sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. Now, we go deeper. This evidence gives us probable cause for wiretaps, surveillance, the works. But it's going to take time. I shook my head. We don't have time. They know we're onto them now. They'll go to ground, change their methods. What are you suggesting? Simmons asked, eyeing me warily. I took a deep breath. Knowing what I was about to propose was dangerous. We need to infiltrate their operation, from the inside. Jen grabbed my arm. Rachel, no, it's too risky. But I could see the wheels turning in Simmons' head. It could work, he said slowly. But it would be incredibly dangerous. We couldn't offer you any official protection. I'll do it, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I'm already on their radar, and I know how they operate better than anyone. Simmons studied me for a long moment, then nodded. All right. But we do this by the book. You'll need training, a solid cover story, and a way to communicate securely. As Simmons began outlining the plan, I felt a mix of fear and determination coursing through me. This was no longer just about Sarah or the other victims we'd discovered. This was about stopping a criminal enterprise that was exploiting people's grief on a massive scale. Jen pulled me aside as Simmons stepped out to make some calls. Are you sure about this? She asked, her eyes filled with worry. These people are dangerous, Rachel. They've already threatened you once. I squeezed her hand. I'm sure. We started this together, remember? And I intend to finish it. As we left the police station that night, the weight of what lay ahead settled over me. I was about to step into the lion's den, to face the very people who had been haunting my digital world for weeks. But as I looked up at the starlit sky, I felt a sense of purpose, stronger than my fear. Somewhere out there, the scammers were regrouping, planning their next move. But this time, we would be one step ahead. The hunt had truly begun, and I was ready to see it through to the end, whatever the cost. The fluorescent lights of the office buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow on the rows of cubicles. I sat at my desk, my fingers flying over the keyboard as I pretended to work on a marketing report. In reality, my eyes were fixed on a small window in the corner of my screen, watching a chat conversation unfold. It had been 3 weeks since I'd gone undercover, infiltrating a low-level position at a marketing firm that we suspected was a front for the scammers' operation. Progress had been slow, but I was finally starting to make headway. A new message popped up in the chat. Crypto King. We've got a big fish. Need all hands on deck for this one. My heart raced as I typed out a response. Marketing newbie. I'm in. What's the target? Crypto King. Check your secure email. Meeting in conference room B in 10. I glanced around the office, making sure no one was watching, then opened the encrypted email account Detective Simmons had set up for me. The file that loaded made my blood run cold. The target was a wealthy widow, Margaret Thornton, who had lost her husband just 2 weeks ago. The file contained an alarming amount of personal information, financial records, family details, even private emails expressing her grief. As I made my way to the conference room, my mind was reeling. How had they obtained such intimate information? The level of invasion was staggering. I pushed open the door to find 5 people already seated around the table. I recognized most of them from the office, but one face made me stop in my tracks. Mike, I gasped, unable to hide my shock. Mike Chen, my coworker from my previous job, looked up with equal surprise. Rachel, what are you doing here? Before I could respond, a sharp voice cut through the tension. You two know each other? I turned to see Alicia, the team leader, eyeing us suspiciously. Thinking quickly, I forced a laugh. Yeah, we used to work together. Small world, huh? Mike nodded, his face a mask of calm. Didn't expect to see you here, Rach. Guess great minds think alike. Alicia's eyes narrowed, but she seemed to accept the explanation. Well, isn't that convenient? Take a seat, both of you. We've got work to do. As the meeting progressed, I struggled to focus. My mind was reeling from the revelation that Mike, someone I had trusted and worked alongside for years, was involved in this scheme. How long had he been part of it? Was he the reason I had been targeted in the first place? Rachel. Alicia's sharp voice cut through my thoughts. You'll be handling the initial contact. Use the grandmother angle we discussed. Mike will back you up as the concerned family friend. I nodded, trying to keep my face neutral. Got it. When do we start? Now, Alicia said, sliding a burner phone across the table. Make the call. With shaking hands, I picked up the phone and dialed the number for Margaret Thornton. As it rang, I could feel Mike's eyes on me, watching intently. Hello? A wavering voice answered. I took a deep breath and slipped into character. Margaret, is that you, dear? It's Grandma Rose. There was a pause, then a confused response. I'm sorry, who is this? It's me, Rosie. Oh, Margaret, I'm in such trouble, I need your help. As I spun the tale we had crafted, of a grandmother trapped overseas needing money to get home, I could see the approving nods from around the table. But all I felt was sick to my stomach. After the call, as the team dispersed, Mike caught my arm. We need to talk, he muttered. Roof, 5 minutes. I nodded, my heart pounding. This was it, the moment of truth. 5 minutes later, I pushed open the door to the roof, the cool night air a stark contrast to the stuffy office below. Mike was already there, pacing nervously. How long have you been involved in this, Mike? I asked, unable to keep the accusation out of my voice. He stopped pacing, his face a mix of shame and defiance. About a year. After I lost my job, I was desperate. They approached me, offered me a way out of my debts. I shook my head in disbelief. So you decided to prey on grieving families? How could you? You don't understand, Rachel, Mike said, his voice rising. I was about to lose everything. My house, my kids, I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice, I shot back. And you chose to become a criminal. Mike's eyes narrowed. And what about you? How did you end up here, huh? Don't tell me you're some kind of undercover cop. I froze, realizing I'd said too much. Mike saw the hesitation in my eyes and his face hardened. You are, aren't you? You're working with the police. Mike, listen to me, I said, taking a step towards him. This has to stop. What we're doing, it's destroying people's lives. Help me bring them down, and I'll make sure the DA knows you cooperated. For a moment, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in Mike's eyes. Then, to my surprise, his shoulders sagged. You're right, he whispered. I never wanted it to go this far. It was supposed to be a one-time thing just to get back on my feet. But they have dirt on me now. I can't just walk away. I felt a glimmer of hope. Yes, you can. We can protect you, Mike. But you have to help us. Mike looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay. What do you need to know? For the next hour, Mike poured out everything he knew about the operation. The key players, the methods they used to gather information, the offshore accounts where they stashed their ill-gotten gains. As we talked, I discreetly sent messages to Detective Simmons updating him on the breakthrough. There's one more thing, Mike said as we prepared to head back inside. The boss, the one running this whole operation. I've never met him, but I've heard rumors. They call him the Puppet Master. I felt a chill run down my spine. Why? Because he pulls all the strings. Every scam, every target, it all goes through him. And Rachel, I think he knows about you. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? Mike leaned in close, his voice barely above a whisper. I overheard Alicia on the phone yesterday. She was talking about a mole in the operation. Said the puppet master was taking care of it. Before I could respond, the roof door burst open. Alicia stood there, flanked by two burly men I'd never seen before. Well, she said, her voice dripping with malice. Looks like our little rats decided to come out of hiding. Mike and I exchanged panicked glances. We were trapped. Alicia, wait, I started to say, but she cut me off with a wave of her hand. Save it, Rachel, or whatever your real name is. The puppet master wants to have a word with you both. As the two men approached us, I frantically tried to think of a way out, but we were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Just as they reached us, a deafening explosion rocked the building. The roof door flew open again, and through the smoke, I saw Detective Simmons leading a SWAT team. Police! Everybody down! In the chaos that followed, I lost sight of Mike. Gunshots rang out, people were shouting, and through it all, I could hear Simmons calling my name. As the smoke began to clear, I saw Alicia making a run for the fire escape. Without thinking, I gave chase. Rachel, wait! Simmons yelled, but I was already halfway down the metal stairs. I followed Alicia through a maze of alleyways, my lungs burning and my heart pounding. Finally, I cornered her in a dead end. It's over, Alicia, I gasped, trying to catch my breath. Give it up. She turned to face me, a wild look in her eyes. You have no idea what you've done, she snarled. The puppet master will never stop, and now he'll come for you. Before I could react, she pulled out a small device and pressed a button. A high-pitched whine filled the air. What did you do? I demanded. Alicia smiled, a cold, mirthless expression. I just sent out a dead man's switch. Every piece of evidence, every name, every dirty little secret, it's all being uploaded to the dark web as we speak. You might have won this battle, Rachel. But the war? It's only just beginning. As the sound of approaching sirens filled the air, I realized with a sinking feeling that she was right. We had struck a blow against the scammers, but the puppet master was still out there. And now he knew who I was. The hunt wasn't over. It had only just begun. The harsh fluorescent lights of the police station's conference room cast long shadows across the faces of those gathered around the table. Detective Simmons stood at the head, his weathered face grim as he addressed the team. "All right, people. We've got one shot at this. The puppet master thinks he's won, but we're about to turn the tables." I sat between Jen and Mike, who had been granted immunity in exchange for his cooperation. The weight of what we were about to do pressed down on me like a physical force. Simmons pointed to a large screen displaying a complex web of connections. "Thanks to the data dump Alicia triggered, we now have a clearer picture of the puppet master's network, but he's still in the wind, and he's going to be looking for a big score to recoup his losses." "That's where I come in," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Simmons nodded. "Rachel's going to create a fake obituary for herself. We're betting the puppet master won't be able to resist the irony of scamming the very person who's been hunting him." Jen reached under the table and squeezed my hand. "Are you sure about this, Rach? It's incredibly risky." I took a deep breath. "I'm sure. This ends now." The next few hours were a flurry of activity. We crafted a detailed obituary, complete with a tragic backstory of a sudden aneurysm. A team of tech experts worked on creating a digital footprint for my death, including social media posts from grieving friends and family. As I watched my own death being fabricated, a chill ran down my spine. "This is surreal," I muttered. Mike, who was helping with the technical aspects, glanced over at me. "Having second thoughts?" I shook my head. "No, just, it's strange, you know, seeing your own obituary." He nodded, his face etched with guilt. "Rachel, I'm sorry. For everything." "I know," I said softly. "Let's just focus on ending this, okay?" As dawn broke, we were ready. The obituary was published, the social media posts were live, and now all we could do was wait. Days passed with no activity. The tension in the station was palpable. Had we miscalculated? Was the puppet master too smart to fall for our trap? On the fourth day, just as we were starting to lose hope, it happened. "We've got movement," one of the tech analysts shouted. We all crowded around his screen. A friend request had been sent to my grieving mother's Facebook account from someone named Thomas Blackwell. "That's him," Mike said, his voice tight. "That's one of the puppet master's main aliases." Simmons turned to me. "You ready for this, Rachel?" I nodded, sitting down at a computer. "Let's do it." With shaking hands, I accepted the friend request. Almost immediately, a message came through. Thomas Blackwell. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm so sorry for your loss. I was a colleague of Rachel's, and I have some important information about her accounts that you need to know." I glanced at Simmons, who gave me a nod. I began to type, slipping into the role of my grieving mother. "Mrs. Thompson." "Thank you, Thomas. It's been such a difficult time. What information do you have?" Thomas Blackwell. "I'm afraid there's been some confusion with Rachel's accounts due to her sudden passing. I work with a company that specializes in digital asset recovery. We need to act quickly to secure her accounts before they're compromised." Mrs. Thompson. "Oh my, that sounds serious. What do I need to do?" Thomas Blackwell. "I'll need some information to verify your identity and Rachel's. Could you provide her social security number and the password to her main email account?" I felt a surge of anger at the audacity of the request. How many grieving families had fallen for this? Mrs. Thompson. "Of course I understand, but I'm not very good with technology. Could we perhaps speak on the phone? I'd feel more comfortable." There was a long pause before the reply came. Thomas Blackwell. "Certainly. I'll call you in 10 minutes. Please use this secure line. Phone number." Simmons immediately set to work tracing the number while I prepared for the call. A voice modulator was set up to make me sound like an older woman. At precisely 10 minutes later, the phone rang. I answered, my heart pounding. "Hello?" I said, my voice quavering thanks to the modulator. "Mrs. Thompson?" A smooth, cultured voice responded. "This is Thomas Blackwell. I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you, Mr. Blackwell, I replied, injecting a note of vulnerability into my voice. This has all been so overwhelming. I understand completely, he said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. That's why I'm here to help. Now, about Rachel's accounts. For the next 20 minutes, I played the role of a confused, grieving mother, as the man calling himself Thomas Blackwell attempted to extract sensitive information. All the while, I could see Simmons and his team working furiously to trace the call. Finally, Simmons gave me the signal. We had a location. Mr. Blackwell, I said, dropping the grieving mother act. I have just one question for you. How does it feel to prey on people's grief? There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then, who is this? This is Rachel Thompson, I said, my voice hard. The woman you thought was dead, and you're about to join her. The line went dead. Simmons was already barking orders. Move, move, move. All units converge on the location. This is not a drill. As the room erupted into chaos, Jen grabbed my arm. Rachel, you did it. But I shook my head, a sense of unease growing in the pit of my stomach. It was too easy. Something's not right. Mike, who had been monitoring the digital traffic, suddenly called out, We've got a problem. Massive data transfer in progress from the target location. He's wiping his servers, I realized with growing horror. We need to stop it. But it was too late. By the time the police reached the location, a high-end apartment in a luxury building, it was empty. The computers were still there, but their hard drives had been fried beyond recovery. As we stood in the empty apartment, surrounded by the ghosts of data we'd failed to capture, Simmons punched a wall in frustration. Damn it, we were so close. I wandered through the rooms, looking for any clue the puppet master might have left behind. In the bedroom, something caught my eye. A single sheet of paper lay on the otherwise bare desk. With trembling hands, I picked it up. It read, Well played, Rachel. But the game isn't over. It's only just begun. P. I showed the note to Simmons, whose face darkened. He knew. Somehow he knew it was a trap. But how? Jen asked, her voice shaking. Mike, who had been examining one of the fried computers, looked up with a grim expression. Because he's always one step ahead. Look at this. He pointed to a small device attached to the computer's motherboard. This is military-grade tech. It allows for remote access and instant data wiping. He probably triggered it the moment Rachel revealed herself on the phone. The implications hit me like a ton of bricks. We're not just dealing with a scammer. This is something much bigger. Simmons nodded, his face set in determination. All right, people. New plan. We're not just hunting a criminal anymore. We're going to war. As we left the apartment, the weight of our failure pressing down on us, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had just scratched the surface of something much darker and more dangerous than we had ever imagined. The puppet master was still out there, and he was watching. The sting operation had failed, but the real battle was just beginning. And this time, the stakes were higher than ever. The war room hummed with nervous energy. Monitors flickered with data streams, and the air was thick with the scent of stale coffee and determination. It had been 3 weeks since our failed sting operation, and we were no closer to catching the puppet master. I stood before a large digital map, my eyes scanning the web of red lines connecting various locations across the globe. Each point represented a suspected node in the puppet master's network. We're missing something, I muttered, frustration evident in my voice. Detective Simmons approached, his face haggard from lack of sleep. We've got movement on the Chicago front, he said, pointing to a blinking dot on the map. I zoomed in, my heart rate quickening. Another scam? Simmons nodded grimly. Yeah, but this one's different. They're going after a high-profile target, CEO of a tech company. That's not their usual MO, I mused, my mind racing. Why change tactics now? Before Simmons could respond, Mike burst into the room, his face pale. We've got a problem, he gasped, out of breath. I just intercepted a communication. They know we're onto the Chicago operation. How? Simmons demanded, his fists clenching. Mike shook his head. I don't know, but they're accelerating their timeline. The scam is happening tonight. A heavy silence fell over the room. We all knew what this meant. If we didn't stop this scam, we might lose our last chance to catch the puppet master. We need to move, I said, my voice steady despite the fear churning in my gut. Now. Simmons nodded, already reaching for his phone. I'll coordinate with Chicago PD. We'll need all hands on deck for this one. As the room erupted into a flurry of activity, Jen pulled me aside. Rachel, are you sure about this? It feels like we're walking into a trap. I met her worried gaze with a determined one of my own. Probably, but it's also our best shot at ending this. I have to go. 4 hours later, I found myself in a surveillance van parked outside a luxurious Chicago high-rise. The target, tech CEO Marcus Holloway, lived in the penthouse suite. Comms check. Simmons's voice crackled through my earpiece. Everyone in position? A chorus of affirmatives came through. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. Remember, Simmons continued, our primary objective is to apprehend the scammers and trace their communication back to the puppet master. Holloway's safety is secondary. I winced at the cold calculus of it all, but I understood the stakes. This was our chance to end a criminal empire that had ruined countless lives. Movement at the north entrance, a voice reported. 2 individuals matching our suspects' descriptions. My heart raced as I watched the grainy security footage. The 2 men moved with purpose, their faces obscured by baseball caps. That's them, Mike confirmed, his voice tense. I recognized the taller one from the Atlanta operation. Simmons's voice came through, sharp and clear. All units, stand by. Let them make contact with the target before we move in. The minutes ticked by agonizingly slowly as we watched the scammers make their way to Holloway's penthouse. Just as they were about to knock on his door, all hell broke loose. Alarms blared throughout the building. Emergency lights began flashing, and we could hear the distant sound of panicked voices. What the hell? Simmons barked. Who triggered the alarm? Before anyone could respond, the feed from our hidden cameras in the hallway cut out. We're blind, I shouted, frantically trying to restore the connection. All units, move in now, Simmons ordered. I burst out of the van, my heart pounding as I raced towards the building. As I entered the lobby, chaos reigned. Residents were streaming out, guided by security personnel. I fought against the tide of people, flashing my temporary badge to get past security. As I reached the elevators, I found them locked down. Stairs! I gasped into my comm, already pushing through the emergency exit. The climb to the penthouse was grueling, but adrenaline pushed me forward. As I reached the top floor, I could hear shouts and the sound of a scuffle. I burst through the stairwell door, gun drawn, to find a scene of utter confusion. The 2 scammers were engaged in a fistfight with Holloway's private security. Holloway himself was nowhere to be seen. FBI, freeze! I shouted, my voice barely audible over the chaos. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. Then one of the scammers made a break for it, shoving past me and racing down the stairs. Suspect fleeing down the north stairwell, I yelled into my comm, already in pursuit. The chase was a blur of pounding feet and gasping breaths. I could hear the scammer just ahead of me, his footsteps echoing in the stairwell. As we burst out onto the ground floor, I saw a black SUV screeching to a halt at the curb. The back door flew open and a figure emerged, extending a hand to the fleeing scammer. Time seemed to slow. I raised my gun, shouting for them to stop. But as the scammer reached the vehicle, I caught a glimpse of the figure in the SUV. My blood ran cold. I knew that face. It was Alicia. Our eyes met for a brief, electric moment. Then she smiled, a cold, triumphant grin that sent chills down my spine. The SUV peeled away just as Simmons and the rest of the team arrived. I stood there, frozen, as the realization hit me. It was a setup, I said, my voice hollow. They wanted us here. Simmons cursed, kicking a nearby trash can. But why? What was the point? As if in answer, all of our phones buzzed simultaneously. I pulled mine out with trembling hands to find a message from an unknown number. Check the news. The game has changed. P. We rushed back to the command center where Mike was already pulling up news feeds on the main screen. What we saw made my heart sink. Breaking news banners flashed across every major network. Massive data breach at Federal Reserve, one headline screamed. Millions of Americans' financial data compromised, declared another. Oh my God, Jen whispered, her face pale. While we were focused on Chicago, they hit the biggest target of all, I finished, the weight of our failure crushing down on me. Simmons slammed his fist on the table. How? How did they pull this off? Mike, who had been furiously typing at his terminal, looked up with a grim expression. It gets worse. The breach. It's been traced back to us. To our operation. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. We hadn't just failed to catch the puppet master. We had unwittingly helped him pull off the biggest financial heist in history. As the chaos of the unfolding crisis swirled around us, I felt a cold certainty settle in my gut. This wasn't just about scams anymore. The puppet master had escalated the game to a terrifying new level, and we had played right into his hands. What do we do now? Jen asked, her voice small in the face of our monumental failure. I took a deep breath, squaring my shoulders. We fight back. We find the puppet master, and we take him down. No matter what it takes. Simmons nodded, his face set in grim determination. Agreed. But from now on, we trust no one outside this room. It's clear we've been compromised. As we began to regroup, formulating plans to deal with both the immediate crisis and our ongoing hunt, I couldn't shake the image of Alicia's triumphant smile from my mind. The puppet master had won this round, but the war was far from over. And I was more determined than ever to see it through to the end. Little did I know, the true scope of what we were up against was beyond anything we could have imagined. The takedown had failed, but it was just the beginning of a much larger, more dangerous game. The soft glow of computer screens illuminated the dimly lit basement. The air was thick with tension and the faint hum of cooling fans. I sat hunched over a keyboard, my eyes burning from hours of staring at lines of code. Anything? Jen's voice broke the silence, startling me. I shook my head, frustration evident in my voice. Nothing concrete. The puppet master's network is like a hydra. Every time we cut off one head, two more appear. It had been 2 weeks since the disastrous operation in Chicago. 2 weeks of sleepless nights, endless coffee, and a growing sense of dread. The fallout from the Federal Reserve hack was catastrophic. Financial markets were in chaos and public trust in institutions was at an all-time low. And we were no closer to catching the mastermind behind it all. Detective Simmons entered the room, his face haggard. "We've got a problem," he said, his voice grave. "The higher-ups are shutting us down. They're blaming us for the breach." "What?" I stood up so quickly my chair toppled over. "They can't do that. We're the only ones who understand the scope of what we're dealing with." Simmons held up a hand, silencing my outburst. "I know, Rachel, but the political pressure is intense. They need a scapegoat, and we're it." A heavy silence fell over the room. Everything we had worked for, all the sacrifices we had made, seemed to crumble around us. Then, Mike spoke up from his corner of the room. Maybe this is an opportunity." We all turned to look at him, confusion evident on our faces. Mike continued, his voice gaining strength. "Think about it. If we're officially shut down, we're off the grid. We can operate without bureaucratic oversight. Go places we couldn't go before." I felt a glimmer of hope. "The dark web," I whispered. Mike nodded. "Exactly. We've been playing by their rules, trying to catch the puppet master in the light. But his real power, his true network, it's all in the shadows." Simmons frowned. "That's incredibly dangerous. And illegal. If we get caught..." "We're already screwed," Jen interjected. At least this way we have a chance of stopping him. I looked around the room, meeting each of their eyes in turn. Are we really considering this? Going rogue? There was a moment of hesitation, then a series of nods. All right, I said, taking a deep breath. Let's do this, but we do it smart. We need a secure connection, untraceable, and we need to be prepared for what we might find down there. The next 48 hours were a blur of preparation. Mike set up a series of proxy servers and VPNs to mask our digital footprint. Jen reached out to some old contacts in the hacking community, gathering intel on the dark web structure and key players. As for me, I dove deep into research on the Puppet Master's known operations, looking for patterns, clues, anything that might give us an edge. Finally, we were ready. I sat at the computer, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. The others gathered around, their faces a mix of anticipation and fear. Here goes nothing, I muttered, and plunged into the dark web. The first few hours were disorienting. The dark web was a labyrinth of hidden services, encrypted messages, and shadowy marketplaces. We sifted through countless forums and chat rooms looking for any mention of the Puppet Master or his operations. Just as frustration was starting to set in, Mike spotted something. Look at this, he said, pointing to a cryptic message board. This user, Shadow Puppet, keeps popping up in threads about high-level financial scams. I leaned in, scanning the posts. The writing style was familiar, reminiscent of the messages we'd received from the Puppet Master. That's him, I said, certainty in my voice. Or at least someone close to him. Simmons nodded. Can we trace the user? Mike shook his head. Not directly, but look at this. He's advertising a service. High-yield investment opportunity for discerning clients. Jen's eyes widened. It's a trap. He's fishing for new victims. Or, I said slowly, an idea forming, it's our way in. The room fell silent as they realized what I was suggesting. Rachel, no, Simmons said, his voice firm. It's too dangerous. If they realize who you are. They won't, I insisted. We'll create a new identity, something they can't trace back to us. This might be our only chance to infiltrate their inner circle. After hours of heated debate, we finally agreed on a plan. We would create a persona, a wealthy, disillusioned banker looking to make a big score. I would play the role, with the others providing backup and monitoring the situation. Over the next few days, we carefully crafted our bait. We created a detailed backstory, complete with a digital footprint that would stand up to scrutiny. We even set up a cryptocurrency wallet with a substantial balance to lend credibility to our wealthy banker persona. Finally, we were ready to make contact. My heart pounded as I typed out a message to Shadow Puppet. Heard you're the one to talk to about high-yield opportunities. I'm interested, very interested. The response came faster than we expected. Prove it. We had anticipated this. Mike had prepared a series of encrypted files containing what appeared to be sensitive financial data. In reality, a carefully constructed mix of real and fake information. I sent the files along with a message. Consider this a gesture of good faith. I have access to much more where this came from. There was a long pause. We all held our breath, waiting. Then a reply. Impressive. Let's talk. Voice chat. 1 hour. Come alone. Simmons immediately protested. Absolutely not. It's too risky. But I stood firm. This is our chance. I have to take it. An hour later, I sat alone in the basement, headset on, waiting for the call. The others were upstairs, monitoring everything but unable to intervene directly. The call connected. A distorted voice filled my ears. Well, our mysterious banker. I must say I'm intrigued. I swallowed hard, slipping into character. Let's skip the pleasantries. I'm here to make money, and I hear you're the best in the business. A low chuckle. Straight to the point, I like that. But tell me, why should I trust you? You shouldn't, I replied coolly. Trust is for fools. But mutual benefit? That's something I understand. There was a pause, then. Very well. Let's discuss business. I have an operation in mind. Something that will make our previous endeavors look like child's play. As the voice outlined a plan so audacious, so potentially catastrophic that it made the Federal Reserve hack look like a minor inconvenience, I felt a chill run down my spine. This wasn't just about money anymore. The puppet master was playing a much bigger game. Interested? The voice asked, a hint of amusement in its tone. I took a deep breath. I'm in. What's our next move? Patience, my friend. Rome wasn't built in a day. You'll receive instructions soon. But first, a test of loyalty. My heart raced. What kind of test? Nothing too difficult. Just a small task to prove your commitment. Check your secure email in 1 hour. Don't disappoint me. The call disconnected, leaving me in stunned silence. I rushed upstairs to find the others waiting anxiously. Well? Jen asked, her voice tense. I shook my head, still processing what I'd heard. We're in. But guys, this is bigger than we thought. Much bigger. As I filled them in on the conversation, I could see the gravity of the situation sinking in. What do we do now? Mike asked, his face pale. I squared my shoulders, a mix of determination and fear coursing through me. We play along, we go deeper, and we stop him, no matter what it takes. As we prepared for whatever test the puppet master had in store for us, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were standing on the precipice of something monumental. The dark web had opened a door, and we were about to step through into a world more dangerous and complex than we could have ever imagined. The game had changed, and the stakes were higher than ever. But one thing was certain. There was no turning back now. The neon lights of Hong Kong's bustling streets blurred outside the taxi window as we sped through the night. My heart raced, a mix of anticipation and fear coursing through my veins. The puppet master's small task had turned out to be anything but small. Are you sure about this? Jen's voice crackled through my earpiece, tension evident in her tone. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. No, but we don't have a choice. This is our only shot. The past week had been a whirlwind. The puppet master's test had involved transferring a significant amount of cryptocurrency to an account in Hong Kong. It was a trap, of course, a way to lure us out of hiding and into his territory. But it was also an opportunity we couldn't pass up. The taxi pulled up to a towering skyscraper, its glass facade reflecting the city's chaotic neon landscape. I stepped out, adjusting my designer suit, part of my cover as the wealthy, corrupt banker we had created. Remember, Simmons's gruff voice came through the earpiece. We have eyes on the building, but once you're inside, you're on your own. If anything feels off, you get out, immediately. I nodded, knowing they could see me through the hidden camera in my glasses. Understood, going dark now. I removed the earpiece and slipped it into my pocket. From this point on, I was truly alone. The lobby was a marvel of marble and glass, but I barely noticed as I made my way to the private elevator bank. A stern-faced security guard approached. Identification, he demanded. I handed over the forged credentials Mike had prepared. The guard scrutinized them for what felt like an eternity, before nodding and stepping aside. The elevator ride to the 88th floor was silent and tense. As the doors opened, I found myself in a minimalist hallway with a single door at the end. Taking a deep breath, I approached and knocked. The door swung open, revealing a stunning penthouse office. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Hong Kong's skyline, but my attention was immediately drawn to the man standing behind an imposing desk. He was younger than I expected, perhaps in his early 40s, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to look right through me. "Ah, our mysterious banker arrives," he said, his voice smooth and cultured. "Welcome, I'm Mr. Wei." I knew this wasn't his real name, just as he knew Jonathan Blackwood wasn't mine. This was all part of the dance. "A pleasure," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "I must say, your operation is impressive." Wei smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. This? This is merely the tip of the iceberg, Mr. Blackwood. Please have a seat. We have much to discuss. As I sat across from him, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was staring into the face of true evil. This man, this puppet master, had ruined countless lives, destabilized entire economies, and he sat here as calmly as if we were discussing the weather. I must admit, Wei began, pouring 2 glasses of what looked like extremely expensive whiskey. I was intrigued by your sudden appearance on our radar. It's not often we encounter someone with your particular set of skills and resources. I accepted the glass, but didn't drink. In my experience, opportunity favors the bold. And from what I've seen, your organization represents a unique opportunity. Wei's eyes narrowed slightly. Indeed, but opportunity comes with risk. How can I be sure you're not a liability? My heart raced, but I kept my expression neutral. The same way I can be sure about you. Trust is earned, Mr. Wei. I'm here to earn it. He chuckled, a cold sound that sent chills down my spine. Well said. In that case, let's discuss the real reason you're here. Wei pressed a button on his desk and a holographic display sprang to life between us. It showed a complex web of connections, linking major financial institutions, government agencies, and what looked like military installations. What you're looking at, Wei explained, his voice taking on an almost reverent tone, is the future, or rather, the key to controlling it. As he outlined his plan, I felt a growing sense of horror. It wasn't just about money or power. The puppet master was planning to create chaos on a global scale, destabilizing governments, crashing economies, and igniting conflicts. Also, he could step in and offer solutions, gaining unprecedented control in the process. It's ambitious, I said, fighting to keep the disgust out of my voice. But surely the risks... Wei waved a hand dismissively. Risks are for lesser men, Mr. Blackwood. We don't just react to the world, we shape it. Now the question is, are you prepared to be part of something truly transformative? I leaned forward, knowing this was the moment of truth. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes, but I need to know I'm not just another pawn in your game. Wei's eyes glittered dangerously. A fair request. Perhaps a demonstration of trust is in order. He pressed another button, and a side door opened. My blood ran cold as Alicia walked in, a smirk playing on her lips. I believe you two are already acquainted, Wei said, amusement in his voice. I fought to keep my expression neutral, but my mind was racing. Had our cover been blown? Was this a trap? Alicia sauntered over, her eyes never leaving mine. It's been a while, Rachel. Or should I say, Jonathan? In that moment, I knew we were in deep trouble. I tensed, ready to make a run for it, but Wei's next word stopped me cold. Oh, don't look so alarmed. We've known who you are from the beginning. My facade crumbled. If you knew, why go through with this charade? Wei smiled, a predatory gleam in his eyes. Because, my dear Rachel, you've proven yourself to be exactly what we need. Smart, resourceful, and willing to go to extraordinary lengths to achieve your goals. You're insane if you think I'd ever work for you, I spat, my disgust finally breaking through. Work for me? Wei laughed. Oh no, Rachel. I'm offering you a chance to work with me, to be part of something greater than you could have ever imagined. As he spoke, images flashed across the holographic display, evidence of corruption in law enforcement, compromising information on political leaders, financial records that could topple governments. You see, Wei continued, the world is a puppet show. Most people never see the strings. But you, Rachel, you've glimpsed behind the curtain. You know the truth. The systems meant to protect us are broken, corrupt. We're offering a chance to tear it all down and build something better. I stood up, my anger overriding my fear. Build something better? You're talking about causing untold suffering, destabilizing the entire world. Wei remained calm, his voice almost hypnotic. Change is never painless, Rachel. But think of the potential. A world without corrupt politicians, without corporate greed driving every decision. A true meritocracy, guided by those with the vision to lead humanity into a new era. For a brief, terrifying moment, I found myself almost swayed by his words. The promise of real, systemic change was seductive. But then I remembered all the lives ruined, all the pain caused by this man's vision. "You're not a visionary," I said, my voice steady. "You're a monster, and I will stop you." Wei sighed almost sadly. "I had hoped you would see reason, but I suppose some people can't be saved from their own limitations." He nodded to Alicia, who drew a gun. "It's a pity. You could have been part of something truly revolutionary." As Alicia took aim, time seemed to slow down. In a split second, I made a decision. I dove for the floor, rolling towards the floor-to-ceiling windows. The sound of gunshots filled the air as I crashed through the glass, plummeting into the Hong Kong night. The wind roared in my ears as I fell, my hand frantically reaching for the small device hidden in my belt, a compact grappling hook Mike had insisted I take. "Just in case," he had said. As I fired the grappling hook at a nearby building, I silently thanked him for his paranoia. The line went taut, swinging me in a wide arc. I crashed through another window, rolling across an office floor, battered and bleeding but alive. Alarms blared as I staggered to my feet. I knew I had only moments before Wei's men would be upon me. I reached for my hidden earpiece, praying it still worked. "Simmons, Jen, anyone, I need extraction now." As I raced through the building, searching for an escape route, my mind reeled from what I had learned. The puppet master's plan was far more terrifying than we had imagined. And worse, part of me understood the twisted logic behind it. But I had made my choice. Whatever it took, whatever the cost, I would stop Wei and his grand, destructive vision. As I burst out onto the street, disappearing into the chaotic Hong Kong night, I knew one thing for certain. The real war had only just begun. The safe house was a flurry of activity. Monitors blinked with incoming data streams, and the air crackled with tension. It had been 3 days since my harrowing escape from Wei's penthouse in Hong Kong, and we were racing against time. "We've got movement on the Moscow server," Mike called out, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "They're initiating some kind of massive data transfer." Simmons leaned over Mike's shoulder, his face grim. "Can you stop it?" Mike shook his head. "I'm trying, but their encryption is like nothing I've ever seen. It's adapting to every attempt we make to breach it." I paced the room, my mind racing. The bruises from my fall were still fresh, a constant reminder of how close we'd come to failure, and how much was at stake. "We need to think bigger," I said, stopping in front of the large digital map that dominated one wall. Red dots pulsed across the globe, each representing a node in Wei's network. "We've been playing defense, reacting to each move. It's time we take the fight to them." Jen looked up from her station, her eyes tired but determined. "What are you thinking, Rachel?" I took a deep breath. "We know Wei's plan involves destabilizing governments and financial institutions. But to do that, he needs control of key systems, power grids, communication networks, financial exchanges. What if we could turn that against him?" Simmons raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "We create a honeypot," I explained, my words coming faster as the plan formed. "A fake vulnerability in a major system, say, the New York Stock Exchange, something so tempting that Wei can't resist." Mike's eyes widened as he caught on. "And when they try to exploit it, we trace it back to their main hub and shut down their entire operation," I finished. The room fell silent as they considered the plan. It was audacious, potentially catastrophic if it went wrong, but it was also our best shot at stopping Wei before he could enact his grand vision of global chaos. Simmons was the first to speak. "It's risky as hell. If we're off by even a fraction, we could cause the very crash we're trying to prevent." I met his gaze steadily. "I know, but we're out of options and out of time. Wei is going to make his move soon, with or without us." After a moment of tense silence, Simmons nodded. All right, let's do it. But we do this by the book, or what's left of it anyway. Mike, start working on the fake vulnerability. Jen, coordinate with our remaining contacts in the financial sector. We need to be ready to contain any fallout. As the team sprang into action, I felt a mix of determination and dread settle in my stomach. This was it. Our last stand against the puppet master. The next 48 hours were a blur of frantic preparation. Mike worked tirelessly to create a convincing yet controlled backdoor into the NYSE's systems. Jen liaised with trusted contacts, setting up safeguards to prevent actual damage to the markets. And I prepared for the confrontation I knew was coming. Finally, everything was in place. We gathered around the main console, tension thick in the air. "Honeypot is live," Mike announced, his voice tight with nervous energy. We watched the screens, waiting. For several agonizing minutes, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, a flurry of activity. "We've got a bite," Mike shouted. "They're probing the vulnerability." Simmons leaned in, his eyes fixed on the screen. "Can you trace it?" Mike's fingers flew over the keyboard. "Working on it. They're bouncing the signal through multiple proxies, but I think... Yes, I've got a location." A map appeared on the main screen, zooming in on a nondescript office building in Singapore. "That's it," I breathed. "That's their main hub." Simmons was already on the phone, coordinating with local authorities. "We need to move fast. Once they realize it's a trap, they'll scatter." I grabbed my jacket, checking the secure phone we'd be using to coordinate the raid. "I'm going in with the team." "Rachel, no," Jen protested. "It's too dangerous. Let the authorities handle it." I shook my head. "I need to see this through. Besides, I'm the only one who's faced Wei in person. I know what he's capable of." Simmons looked like he wanted to argue, but instead just nodded. "Be careful. And Rachel, end this." Hours later, I found myself crouched in the stairwell of the Singapore office building, heart pounding as I listened to the chaos unfolding around me. The raid had begun, and the sound of shouting and gunfire echoed through the structure. "12th floor clear," a voice crackled through my earpiece. "No sign of the primary target." I gritted my teeth in frustration. Wei was here. I could feel it. But where? Suddenly, a memory flashed through my mind. The rooftop garden I'd glimpsed from Wei's penthouse in Hong Kong. On a hunch, I began climbing towards the roof. As I burst through the roof access door, the humid Singapore air hit me like a wall, and there, standing calmly by a helipad, was Wei. He turned as I approached, a slight smile on his face. "Ah, Rachel, I must admit I'm impressed. You've led quite the chase." I kept my gun trained on him, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "It's over, Wei. Your network is being dismantled as we speak." He chuckled, seemingly unfazed by the sounds of the raid below. "Is it? Tell me, Rachel. Do you really think this is the extent of my operation? What you've seen, what you've uncovered, it's merely the surface." Doubt crept into my mind, but I pushed it aside. "Maybe, but it ends here, one way or another." Wei's eyes hardened, all pretense of amusement gone. "You still don't see the bigger picture, do you? The world is broken, Rachel, corrupt to its core. What I'm doing isn't destruction, it's creative chaos. From the ashes of this diseased system, a new order will rise." "At what cost?" I demanded. "How many lives are you willing to sacrifice for your new order?" "As many as it takes," Wei replied, his voice cold. "Revolutions aren't won with half measures." Before I could respond, the door behind me burst open. I spun, expecting reinforcements, only to see Alicia, her gun aimed squarely at my chest. "You should have taken the offer, Rachel," she said, a hint of regret in her voice. Time seemed to slow. I was caught between Wei and Alicia, the wind whipping around us as a helicopter approached in the distance. In that moment, I realized that this was always how it was going to end. Not with a grand victory, but with a brutal personal confrontation. "It's not too late," Wei called out over the roar of the approaching helicopter. "Join us, Rachel. With your skills, your insight, we could reshape the world." For a fleeting second, I felt the pull of his words. The promise of real systemic change was seductive. But then I remembered all the lives ruined, all the pain caused by this man's vision. "The world doesn't need reshaping," I shouted back. "It needs people willing to fight for what's right every single day. Not grand gestures, not global chaos, but small acts of kindness and courage." Wei's face hardened. "Then you've made your choice." What happened next was a blur of motion. Alicia fired, but I was already moving, diving and rolling across the rooftop. I heard Wei shout something, saw him running for the helicopter that was now hovering at the edge of the building. Ignoring the searing pain in my shoulder where Alicia's bullet had grazed me, I scrambled to my feet and gave chase. Wei was almost at the helicopter, Alicia providing covering fire. In that moment, I made a decision. I aimed not at Wei, but at the helicopter's fuel tank. 2 shots rang out, and suddenly the night was illuminated by a massive fireball. The force of the explosion knocked us all off our feet. As I struggled to stand, my ears ringing, I saw Wei lying near the edge of the roof, badly injured but still alive. I approached him, gun raised. He looked up at me, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead, and laughed, a hollow, defeated sound. "Well played, Rachel," he coughed. "But do you really think it ends here? There will always be others. The system is too broken, too corrupt to save." I knelt beside him, my voice firm. "Maybe. But as long as there are people willing to stand against the darkness, there's hope." As the sounds of the raid grew closer, I saw a flicker of something in Wei's eyes. Not fear, but a grudging respect. "Perhaps," he murmured, "I underestimated the power of hope." Moments later, the roof was swarming with agents. As they took Wei into custody, I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. It was over. We had won, for now. Simmons appeared at my side, concern etched on his weathered face. "You all right?" I nodded, wincing at the pain in my shoulder. "Yeah, it's done." As we made our way down from the roof, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't really the end. Wei was right about one thing. There would always be others, always be new threats to face. But as I looked at Simmons, thought of Jen and Mike, and all the others who had fought alongside me, I felt a glimmer of hope. We had faced the darkness and emerged, battered but unbroken. Whatever came next, we would face it together. The war wasn't over, but we had won a crucial battle. And in that moment, as the Singapore sun began to rise on a new day, that was enough. The incessant honking of car horns filtered through my apartment window, a cacophony that usually faded into the background of my daily life in Salt Lake City. But today, each blare seemed to pierce my skull, amplifying the dull throb behind my eyes. I massaged my temples, willing the headache to subside as I navigated the cluttered space of my home office. "Come on, Emma," I muttered to myself, rifling through the stack of papers on my desk. "Where did you put that file?" My fingers brushed against something leather-bound and unfamiliar. Frowning, I pulled it out from beneath the pile of documents. A journal, its cover a deep burgundy, lay in my hands. I turned it over, running my fingers along the spine. It looked expensive, the kind of thing I'd admire in a bookstore but never actually buy for myself. "What the hell?" I whispered, flipping it open. My heart skipped a beat as I recognized my own handwriting sprawled across the pages. But that was impossible. I didn't own a journal like this, and I certainly didn't remember writing in one recently. I sank into my chair, my legs suddenly weak. The first entry was dated today. October 15th, 2023. I read aloud, my voice trembling. Woke up at 6:30 a.m., shower, breakfast, toast with avocado, coffee, left for work at 8:15 a.m. My eyes darted to the clock on my desk. 7:30 p.m. The entry went on to detail my entire day, including a lunch meeting I'd had with my boss and a phone call with my mother. Every detail was accurate, down to the color of the tie my colleague had worn. "This isn't possible," I muttered, flipping through more pages. Each day of the past week was meticulously documented, recording my activities, conversations, even my thoughts and feelings, but I had no recollection of writing any of it. My phone buzzed, making me jump. I answered without checking the caller ID, my eyes still glued to the journal. Hello? My voice sounded distant, even to my own ears. Emma? Are you okay? It was my best friend, Lily. You sound weird. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my voice. Lily, I found something strange. Strange how? Concern colored her tone. A journal. It's in my handwriting, but I don't remember writing in it. It has entries for today, yesterday, the whole week. There was a pause on the other end. Emma, honey, are you sure you're not just tired? Maybe you forgot about writing in it. I shook my head vehemently, even though she couldn't see me. No, Lily, I'm telling you, I've never seen this journal before in my life, but it knows everything. It says we had coffee yesterday at the Daily Grind. Is that true? Yeah, we did, Lily confirmed slowly. You don't remember? My free hand clenched into a fist, nails digging into my palm. I remember, but I didn't write it down. At least I don't think I did. God, Lily, what's happening to me? Okay, calm down, Lily said, her voice soothing. I'm coming over. Don't do anything, just stay put. The line went dead before I could respond. I dropped my phone onto the desk and stood up, suddenly feeling claustrophobic in my small office. My legs carried me to the living room, where I paced back and forth, the journal clutched tightly to my chest. My eyes darted around the apartment, searching for any sign of intrusion. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt right. How could someone have written this? How could they know every detail of my life? A horrible thought struck me. What if someone had been watching me? I rushed to the windows, yanking the curtains closed. Then I began a frantic search of the apartment, looking for hidden cameras or microphones. I was on my hands and knees, peering under the couch, when a knock at the door made me yelp in surprise. Emma, it's me, open up. Lily's voice. I scrambled to my feet and rushed to the door, checking the peephole before unlocking it. Lily burst in, her face etched with worry. Jesus, Emma, you look like hell, she said, pulling me into a hug. I clung to her, suddenly realizing I was shaking. Lily, I'm scared. I don't understand what's happening. She guided me to the couch, sitting down beside me. Show me this journal. With trembling hands, I passed it to her. Lily flipped through the pages, her frown deepening with each turn. This is definitely your handwriting, she murmured. But I didn't write it, I insisted, my voice rising. Lily, please believe me. I would never forget writing something like this. Lily closed the journal and set it on the coffee table. She took my hands in hers, her grip firm and grounding. I believe you, Emma, but we need to figure this out. Have you noticed anything else strange lately? Missing time, maybe? Blackouts? I shook my head, then paused. I don't know. Sometimes I feel a bit fuzzy, like I've just woken up from a nap. But doesn't everyone feel like that sometimes? Lily's expression was grave. Emma, I think we need to consider that something might be wrong. Medically, I mean. The implication hit me like a punch to the gut. You think I'm crazy? No, Lily said quickly. Not crazy. But maybe there's something going on with your memory. We should get you checked out. I pulled my hands away, standing up. I'm not imagining this, Lily. The journal is right there. I know. I can see it. Lily said calmly. I'm not saying you're imagining anything, but there has to be an explanation, and we need to find out what it is. I ran my hands through my hair, tugging at the roots. This is insane. It's like I'm living in some kind of psychological thriller. Things like this don't happen in real life. Lily stood up, placing her hands on my shoulders. Emma, look at me. We're going to figure this out, okay? But first, you need to calm down. Take a deep breath. I did as she said, inhaling deeply and letting it out slowly. The panic receded slightly, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Okay, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Okay, what do we do now? Lily glanced at her watch. It's too late to call a doctor now. Why don't you pack a bag and stay at my place tonight? We can tackle this with fresh eyes in the morning. The thought of staying in my apartment with that mysterious journal sent a shiver down my spine. Yeah, okay. That sounds good. As I moved to my bedroom to pack, Lily called out, "Don't forget to bring the journal." I froze, looking back at the innocuous book sitting on my coffee table. Part of me wanted to leave it behind, to pretend I'd never found it. But I knew that wasn't an option. Whatever was happening, that journal was the key to figuring it out. With a deep breath, I picked up the journal and slipped it into my overnight bag. As we left the apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that by taking the journal with me, I was stepping onto a path that would change my life forever. Little did I know just how right I was. The harsh morning light filtered through Lily's curtains, rousing me from a fitful sleep. For a blissful moment, I forgot why I was in her guest room. Then reality came crashing back, bringing with it a wave of anxiety that threatened to drown me. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, squinting at the bright screen. 7:15 a.m. With a groan, I swung my legs over the side of the bed, my bare feet touching the cool hardwood floor. The events of the previous night felt surreal in the light of day. Maybe it had all been a bad dream. But as I padded into the kitchen, I saw the burgundy journal sitting on Lily's counter, a silent reminder that this nightmare was all too real. "Morning." Lily's voice startled me. She was leaning against the doorframe, 2 steaming mugs in her hands. "Coffee?" I nodded, gratefully accepting the cup. "Thanks for letting me stay." Lily's eyes flickered to the journal. "How are you feeling?" I took a sip of coffee, buying time to sort through my jumbled thoughts. "Honestly, I'm not sure. Part of me hopes I'll wake up and this will all have been some elaborate hallucination." "Emma," Lily began, her tone gentle but firm, "we need to talk about what we're going to do." I set my mug down with more force than necessary, coffee sloshing over the rim. "What is there to do, Lily? I found a journal I don't remember writing. Maybe I'm sleepwalking or something." "Sleepwalking doesn't explain the level of detail in those entries," Lily countered. "We need to consider all possibilities." "Like what?" I snapped, immediately regretting my harsh tone. "Sorry, I'm scared, Lily." Lily reached across the counter, squeezing my hand. "I know. That's why we need to approach this logically. First things first, let's verify some of the information in the journal." I nodded, retrieving the journal with trembling hands. Flipping it open to yesterday's entry, I read aloud. "Called Mom at 2:30 p.m. Discussed Thanksgiving plans and Dad's new hobby of birdwatching." Lily raised an eyebrow. "Well, did you?" I racked my brain, trying to remember. I think so. It sounds familiar, but..." "Call her," Lily urged, pushing my phone towards me. "Confirm it." With a deep breath, I dialed my mother's number. Each ring seemed to last an eternity before her cheerful voice answered. "Emma, what a lovely surprise to hear from you 2 days in a row." My heart rate spiked. 2 days in a row? "Yes, dear. We just spoke yesterday about Thanksgiving, remember? Your father is so excited about his new bird-watching binoculars." I struggled to keep my voice steady. "Right, of course. Sorry, Mom, I've been a bit scattered lately. Listen, I've got to run, but I'll call you later, okay?" After hanging up, I looked at Lily, my eyes wide with disbelief. She confirmed it, every detail. Lily's brow furrowed. "Okay, let's not panic. There has to be a rational explanation." "Rational?" I laughed, the sound bordering on hysterical. "What's rational about this, Lily? I'm losing my mind." "You're not losing your mind," Lily said firmly. "But we need to consider the possibility that something's going on with your memory. Maybe we should see a doctor." The thought of medical tests and probing questions made my stomach churn. "No, not yet. I need to figure this out myself first." Lily looked like she wanted to argue, but instead said, "All right, what do you want to do?" I stood up, suddenly feeling restless. I need to go home. Maybe there's something there, some clue I missed. I'll come with you, Lily offered, but I shook my head. No, I need to do this alone, but I'll call you if I find anything, I promise. An hour later, I stood in the middle of my apartment, unsure where to begin. The place looked exactly as I'd left it, yet everything felt off, as if I'd stepped into a parallel universe where everything was slightly askew. I started in the office, meticulously going through every drawer, every file. There had to be something, some evidence of what was happening to me. As I rifled through a stack of papers, a business card fluttered to the floor. Dr. Evelyn Chen, psychiatrist. I frowned, picking up the card. I didn't remember ever seeing a psychiatrist. Flipping it over, I saw a handwritten note. Emma, Tuesday, 3 p.m., don't forget. My hands shook as I checked my phone's calendar. There it was, an appointment scheduled for next Tuesday with Dr. Chen, but I had no memory of making it. Desperate for answers, I dialed the number on the card. Dr. Chen's office, how may I help you? A receptionist answered. Hi, this is Emma Lawson. I have an appointment next Tuesday, but I'm a bit confused. Could you tell me when I scheduled this? There was a pause and the sound of typing. Ms. Lawson, you scheduled this appointment 2 weeks ago during your last session with Dr. Chen. The room seemed to spin around me. My last session? I'm sorry, there must be some mistake. I've never seen Dr. Chen before. The receptionist's voice took on a concerned tone. Ms. Lawson, you've been a patient of Dr. Chen's for the past 3 months. Is everything all right? I mumbled something about a mix-up and quickly hung up, my mind reeling. 3 months? How could I have been seeing a psychiatrist for 3 months without remembering? In a daze, I wandered into my bedroom, my eyes landing on my laptop. Maybe there was something there, emails or documents that could shed light on what was happening. As I opened my laptop, a sticky note on the screen caught my attention. Password, Phoenix, 1990. I frowned. I always used the same password for everything, and this wasn't it. With trembling fingers, I typed in the new password. The laptop unlocked, revealing a desktop I didn't recognize. There were folders I'd never seen before. Therapy notes, memory exercises, daily logs. My breath caught in my throat as I opened the daily logs folder. It was full of document files, each named with a date. With a sense of dread, I opened the most recent one. The document was a detailed account of yesterday, matching the handwritten entry in the journal almost word for word. I scrolled through the files, realizing with growing horror that I had been documenting my life meticulously for months, without any recollection of doing so. This can't be happening, I whispered to the empty room. A notification popped up on the screen, a reminder for a video call in 5 minutes with someone named Dr. S. Without thinking, I clicked accept when the call came through. A kind-faced woman in her 50s appeared on the screen. Hello, Emma. How are you feeling today? I stared at her, speechless. She frowned, concern etching her features. Emma, are you all right? You look pale. Who are you? I managed to stammer. The woman's frown deepened. Emma, it's Dr. Simmons. We've been having these sessions twice a week for the past month. Are you experiencing another episode? Episode. The word echoed in my mind, bringing with it a flood of terrifying possibilities. I don't remember, I whispered, tears welling up in my eyes. I don't remember any of this. Dr. Simmons leaned closer to the camera, her voice gentle but urgent. Emma, I need you to listen carefully. You're experiencing an episode of dissociative amnesia. We've discussed this before. I need you to take deep breaths and try to stay calm. Can you do that for me? I nodded, struggling to control my breathing. Good, Dr. Simmons continued. Now there's a notebook in your bedside drawer. I need you to get it and read the first page. Can you do that? With shaking hands, I retrieved a small notebook from the drawer. Opening it, I read aloud. My name is Emma Lawson. I have dissociative amnesia. If you're reading this, you're experiencing an episode. Stay calm. Trust Dr. Simmons and Dr. Chen. You are safe. This will pass. The The words, written in my own handwriting, seemed to mock me. I looked back at the screen, meeting Dr. Simmons's sympathetic gaze. "I don't understand," I whispered, my voice breaking. "What's happening to me?" Dr. Simmons' voice was calm and reassuring. "Emma, we're going to get through this together, just like we have before. I know you're scared and confused, but I promise you, you're not alone. We're going to help you remember." As the reality of my situation began to sink in, I felt a curious mix of terror and relief. Terror at the vast gaps in my memory, at the life I'd apparently been living without knowing, but also relief that I wasn't going crazy, that there was a name for what was happening to me. "Okay," I said, taking a deep breath. "Okay, what do we do now?" Dr. Simmons smiled encouragingly. "Now we begin again. Are you ready, Emma?" I nodded, clutching the notebook like a lifeline. "I'm ready." As I settled in for what promised to be a long and difficult conversation, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on the edge of a precipice, about to dive into the depths of my own fractured mind. Whatever lay ahead, whatever truths I was about to uncover, I knew my life would never be the same again. The soft glow of my laptop screen illuminated the darkness of my bedroom. It was 2:37 a.m., and sleep eluded me. My conversation with Dr. Simmons had left me reeling, my mind a tumultuous sea of questions and fears. Dissociative amnesia. The term echoed in my head, a diagnosis that explained everything and nothing at the same time. Dr. Simmons had walked me through the basics, a condition where the mind suppresses memories often due to trauma. But what trauma? What could have been so terrible that my brain decided to simply forget? I rubbed my eyes, exhausted but too wired to sleep. My gaze fell on the burgundy journal sitting innocently on my nightstand. With a deep breath, I reached for it, flipping to a blank page. October 17th, 2023, I wrote, my pen hesitating over the paper. "I don't know who I am anymore." The words stared back at me, stark and honest. I continued writing, pouring my confusion and fear onto the page until my hand cramped and my eyes grew heavy. As I set the pen down, a wave of dizziness washed over me. The room seemed to tilt and spin, and I gripped the edge of the desk, trying to steady myself. "Not now," I muttered, recognizing the signs Dr. Simmons had warned me about. "Please, not now." But the darkness was encroaching, my vision tunneling. The last thing I saw was the clock on my nightstand, 3:15 a.m., before everything went black. I blinked awake, disoriented. Sunlight streamed through the windows and birds chirped outside. How long had I been asleep? Groggily, I reached for my phone. 10:23 a.m. I sat up with a jolt, suddenly wide awake. 7 hours. I'd lost 7 hours. My heart pounding, I looked around the room. Everything seemed normal, undisturbed. Then my eyes fell on the journal, open on my desk. With trembling hands, I picked it up. There, in my handwriting but with no memory of writing it, was a new entry. October 17th, 2023, continued, 3:30 a.m., couldn't sleep. Went for a walk in the park. The night air was cool, leaves crunching under my feet. Sat on a bench and watched the stars for hours. Felt peaceful for the first time in days. 6:45 a.m., returned home, made coffee, watched the sunrise from the balcony. 7:30 a.m., called in sick to work, need time to process everything. 8:15 a.m., researched dissociative amnesia online, found a support group that meets on Thursdays, might go. 9:45 a.m., exhaustion finally setting in, going to try to sleep. Remember, you are safe. This is part of the healing process. I stared at the words, a mix of emotions churning inside me. Relief that I hadn't done anything dangerous, fear at the realization that I'd been out in the middle of the night with no recollection, and a strange sense of disconnect, like reading about someone else's life. My phone buzzed, startling me. A text from Lily. "Hey, how are you doing? Want to grab lunch?" I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. How could I explain this to her? How could I explain it to anyone? Before I could respond, my phone rang. Dr. Chen's office. "Hello?" I answered, my voice hoarse. "Emma, it's Dr. Chen. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." I swallowed hard. "No, it's fine. I just woke up." There was a pause. "Emma, the monitoring app on your phone alerted me to unusual activity last night. Did you experience an episode?" The monitoring app. Another thing I didn't remember installing but was apparently a part of my treatment. I think so," I admitted. "I lost about 7 hours. But I wrote in the journal. I went for a walk, apparently." Dr. Chen's voice was calm, but I could hear the concern underneath. "I see. Emma, I think we should move up our appointment. Can you come in today? Say, in 2 hours?" The thought of leaving my apartment, of facing the outside world, sent a spike of anxiety through me. But I knew I needed help. "Okay," I agreed. "I'll be there." After hanging up, I forced myself to go through the motions of getting ready. Shower, clothes, a futile attempt at breakfast that ended with me staring at a piece of toast until it went cold. As I was about to leave, my eyes fell on the journal again. On impulse, I shoved it into my bag. Maybe it held more answers than I realized. The trip to Dr. Chen's office was a blur of anxious thoughts and hyper-awareness. Every person I passed on the street seemed to be staring, as if they could see the broken pieces of my mind. Dr. Chen's waiting room was mercifully empty when I arrived. The receptionist, a kind-faced woman in her 50s, smiled at me. "Go right in, Emma. Dr. Chen is expecting you." I nodded, steeling myself as I opened the door to the office. Dr. Chen was a petite woman with sharp eyes and a gentle smile. She gestured to the comfortable armchair across from her. "Emma, thank you for coming in on such short notice. How are you feeling?" I sank into the chair, suddenly exhausted. Honestly, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Or maybe I've already lost it. Dr. Chen leaned forward, her expression compassionate but professional. "You haven't lost your mind, Emma. What you're experiencing is a recognized medical condition. It's scary, I know, but it's treatable." "But why?" I burst out, tears pricking at my eyes. "Why is this happening to me? What could have been so terrible that my brain decided to just check out?" Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment, considering her words carefully. "The mind is complex, Emma. Sometimes it protects us from memories or experiences that are too painful to process. Our goal is not just to recover those memories, but to help you develop coping mechanisms to deal with them." I pulled out the journal, clutching it like a lifeline. I wrote things. During the episode, it's like reading about a stranger's life. "May I?" Dr. Chen asked, holding out her hand. I hesitated for a moment before handing over the journal. She read the entry silently, her brow furrowing slightly. "Emma, this is actually a positive sign. Your alter ego, the part of you that takes over during these episodes, is trying to communicate with you. It's leaving you messages, trying to reassure you." "My alter ego," I repeated, the words feeling foreign on my tongue. "So what? I have multiple personalities now?" Dr. Chen shook her head. "Not in the way you're thinking. Dissociative amnesia is different from dissociative identity disorder. You don't have distinct, fully formed, alternate personalities. Rather, you have periods where your conscious mind steps back, for lack of a better term. But it's still you, Emma. Just a part of you that's trying to protect the whole." I leaned back in the chair, trying to process this information. "So how do we fix it? How do I become whole again?" "It's a process," Dr. Chen explained gently. "We'll continue with our therapy sessions, working to uncover the root cause of your dissociation. The medication we've prescribed should help stabilize your mood and reduce the frequency of episodes. And we'll work on integrating your experiences, helping your conscious mind accept and process the memories and actions of your dissociative states." I nodded, feeling overwhelmed but also, for the first time, a glimmer of hope. And the journal? Should I keep writing in it? Absolutely, Dr. Chen encouraged. It's an excellent tool for communication between your states of consciousness. I want you to write in it every day and read previous entries regularly. It might feel strange, but it's a crucial part of the integration process. As our session wound down, Dr. Chen gave me a reassuring smile. Emma, I know this is frightening, but you're not alone in this. We're here to support you every step of the way. I stood up, feeling drained, but somehow lighter. Thank you, Dr. Chen. I think I'm ready to face this. Whatever this turns out to be. As I left the office, I pulled out my phone and finally replied to Lily's text. Rain check on lunch? But maybe dinner? I have a lot to tell you. Stepping out into the sunlight, I took a deep breath. The world around me was the same, but everything had changed. I was on a journey now, a quest to uncover the hidden parts of myself, to face whatever truths lay buried in my mind. It would be difficult, painful even, but as I clutched the journal to my chest, I felt a surge of determination. Whatever had happened to me, whatever I had forgotten, I would face it. I would remember, and I would heal. The first episode had shaken me to my core, but it had also awakened something in me, a fierce resolve to reclaim my life, my memories, my very self. As I walked home, each step felt like a small victory, a move towards wholeness. The journey ahead was long and uncertain, but for the first time since this all began, I felt ready to face it. One day at a time, one memory at a time, I would piece myself back together. And maybe, just maybe, I would emerge stronger for having been broken. The waiting room of Salt Lake Neuropsychiatric Institute was eerily quiet, save for the soft ticking of a wall clock and the occasional rustle of papers. I sat rigidly in an uncomfortable chair, my fingers drumming an anxious rhythm on the burgundy journal in my lap. Today was the day I'd receive my official diagnosis, the culmination of weeks of tests, interviews, and monitored episodes. Lily sat beside me, her presence a comforting anchor in the storm of my thoughts. She reached over and stilled my restless hand with her own. "It's gonna be okay, Em," she whispered, giving my fingers a gentle squeeze. I tried to smile, but it felt more like a grimace. What if it's not? What if they tell me I'm beyond help? Lily's eyes flashed with determination. That's not going to happen. Whatever the diagnosis, we'll face it together. You're not alone in this. Before I could respond, a door opened, and a nurse called out, "Emma Lawson?" I stood on shaky legs, Lily rising with me. "Do you want me to come in with you?" she asked. For a moment I was tempted to say yes, to cling to the support she offered, but I shook my head. "No, I need to do this part alone, but thank you." With a deep breath, I followed the nurse down a sterile hallway to a large office. Dr. Chen was there, along with another doctor I recognized from my battery of tests. Dr. Reeves, a neurologist. "Emma, please, have a seat," Dr. Chen said, gesturing to a chair across from their desk. "How are you feeling today?" I sank into the chair, clutching my journal like a shield. Nervous, scared, a little nauseous, to be honest. Dr. Reeves nodded sympathetically. "That's completely understandable, Emma. We have a lot to discuss today." Dr. Chen leaned forward, her expression serious but kind. "Emma, we've completed our evaluation, and we're ready to share our findings with you. Are you prepared to hear this?" I swallowed hard, my mouth suddenly dry. As ready as I'll ever be, I suppose. Dr. Chen nodded, exchanging a glance with Dr. Reeves before continuing. "Based on your symptoms, your test results, and our observations over the past few weeks, we can confirm that you are experiencing a condition known as dissociative amnesia, with episodes of dissociative fugue." The words hung in the air, heavy with implications I was only beginning to understand. What does that mean exactly?" I managed to ask. Dr. Reeves took over, his voice calm and clinical. Dissociative amnesia is a condition where a person blocks out certain information, usually associated with a stressful or traumatic event. In your case, Emma, you're experiencing retrograde amnesia, an inability to recall past events, as well as anterograde amnesia during your episodes, where you're unable to form new memories. I nodded slowly, trying to process this information. And the fugue part? Dissociative fugue, Dr. Chen explained, is a rarer subtype of dissociative amnesia. During a fugue state, a person may travel or wander away from their home or workplace, sometimes even assuming a new identity temporarily. This aligns with the episodes you've described, where you found yourself in unfamiliar places with no memory of how you got there. My mind reeled, memories of waking up in strange locations flashing through my thoughts. But why? Why is this happening to me? Dr. Chen's expression softened. Dissociative disorders are typically a response to trauma, Emma. Your mind is trying to protect you from memories or experiences that it deems too painful to process consciously. But I don't remember any trauma, I protested, my voice rising with frustration and fear. How can I be traumatized by something I can't even remember? Dr. Reeves leaned forward, his tone gentle but firm. That's precisely the point, Emma. Your mind has buried these memories so deeply that you can't access them consciously. But they're still affecting you, still influencing your behavior and your mental state. I felt tears welling up in my eyes, a mix of relief at finally having a name for what was happening to me and terror at the implications. So what do we do now? How do we fix this? Dr. Chen and Dr. Reeves exchanged another glance before Dr. Chen spoke. Treatment for dissociative amnesia is complex, Emma. It's not about fixing you, but rather helping you integrate your memories and experiences and developing coping mechanisms to deal with the underlying trauma. We'll be implementing a multifaceted treatment plan, Dr. Reeves added. This will include continued psychotherapy with Dr. Chen, cognitive behavioral therapy to help you manage anxiety and depression symptoms, and possibly EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, to help process traumatic memories as they surface. My head was spinning with all this information. And medication? I asked, remembering the pills I'd been prescribed weeks ago. Dr. Chen nodded. Yes, we'll continue with the anti-anxiety medication for now, and we may adjust or add to your prescription as needed. The goal is to stabilize your mood and reduce the frequency of dissociative episodes. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. How long will this take? When will I be normal again? Dr. Chen reached across the desk, her hand resting comfortingly on mine. Emma, recovery from dissociative disorders is a journey, not a destination. There's no set timeline. Some people see significant improvement in months, for others it can take years. The important thing is that you're not alone in this journey. I nodded, wiping away a stray tear. And my life? My job? How am I supposed to function like this? That's something we'll work on together, Dr. Chen assured me. We'll develop strategies to help you manage your day-to-day life, including how to handle episodes if they occur at work or in public. Your journal, she gestured to the book in my lap, will continue to be a crucial tool in this process. Dr. Reeves added, we'll also be working with you on grounding techniques and mindfulness exercises. These can help you stay present and may even help you recognize when an episode is about to occur. I sat back in my chair, feeling overwhelmed, but also, strangely, a bit relieved. There was a name for what was happening to me. There was a plan. It wasn't all in my head. Or rather, it was, but in a way that could be understood and treated. Okay, I said finally, my voice stronger than I expected. Okay, what's our next step? Dr. Chen smiled, a hint of pride in her eyes. Our next step is to schedule more frequent therapy sessions. I'd like to see you 3 times a week to start. We'll also set up an appointment with our EMDR specialist. Dr. Reeves chimed in. And I'd like to see you back here in a month to reassess your neurological symptoms and adjust your treatment plan as needed. I nodded, already reaching for my phone to make notes. It felt good to have a plan, to be taking action rather than just reacting to my symptoms. As the meeting wound down and I prepared to leave, Dr. Chen stopped me with a gentle hand on my arm. Emma, I want you to remember something. This diagnosis doesn't define you. It's a part of your story, but it's not the whole story. You're still you, strong, resilient, and capable of healing. Her words brought fresh tears to my eyes, but this time, they were tears of gratitude and hope. Thank you, I whispered, unable to express how much her support meant to me. Stepping out of the office, I found Lily waiting anxiously in the hallway. One look at my face, and she enveloped me in a tight hug. Well? She asked, as she pulled back, her eyes searching mine. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the diagnosis, but also a newfound determination. It's official. Dissociative amnesia with fugue episodes. It's going to be a long road, Lily. Lily squeezed my hand, her voice firm and unwavering. And I'll be with you every step of the way. Now, how about we get out of here and get some ice cream? I think we both could use a sugar boost after all this. As we walked out of the Institute into the bright Salt Lake City afternoon, I felt a curious mix of emotions. Fear of the unknown path ahead, relief at finally having answers, and a spark of hope that had been missing for so long. The journal in my bag felt heavier now, laden with the weight of forgotten memories and untold stories. But it also felt like a key to unlocking the mysteries of my own mind, to reclaiming the parts of myself I'd lost. The diagnosis was just the beginning. The real journey, the journey of remembering, of healing, of becoming whole again, was only just beginning. And for the first time in months, I felt ready to face it head-on. The soft, rhythmic ticking of the metronome filled Dr. Chen's office, its steady beat a stark contrast to the chaotic swirl of my thoughts. I lay on the comfortable recliner, my eyes closed, trying to focus on my breathing as Dr. Chen's soothing voice guided me deeper into a state of hypnosis. "You're walking down a long corridor, Emma," she said, her words slow and measured. "At the end of this corridor is a door. Behind this door are your memories. As you approach the door, you feel safe, protected. You are in control. You can open the door as much or as little as you feel comfortable with. Are you ready?" I took a deep breath, my hands clenching involuntarily at my sides. "I'm ready," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "All right, Emma. Reach out and turn the doorknob. What do you see?" For a moment, there was nothing but darkness. Then, like a projector flickering to life, images began to form in my mind's eye. I see a park. There's a playground. I'm young, maybe 8 or 9. Good, Emma. You're doing great. Look around. Is there anyone else there? I concentrated, trying to bring the hazy image into focus. Yes, there's another girl. My age. We're laughing, running towards the swings. Do you know who she is? A name bubbled up from the depths of my subconscious. Sarah. Her name is Sarah. She's my best friend. Dr. Chen's voice remained calm, but I could hear a note of excitement in it. That's excellent, Emma. Now I want you to move forward in time. The sun is setting. What's happening? The scene in my mind shifted, colors bleeding into darker hues. The laughter faded, replaced by a growing sense of unease. We're leaving the park. Sarah's mom was supposed to pick us up, but she's late. We decide to walk home. It's getting dark. My heart rate began to accelerate, and I felt a bead of sweat trickle down my temple. Dr. Chen must have noticed my distress because her voice took on a more cautious tone. Remember, Emma, you're safe here. You're just observing. If it becomes too much, you can step back at any time. Do you want to continue? I nodded, my jaw clenched. Yes, I need to know. All right, what happens next? The images came faster now, more vivid. We're walking along the road, it's dark. Headlights appear behind us. Sarah pushes me into the ditch beside the road. There's a screech of tires, a horrible sound. Suddenly I was gasping for air, my eyes flying open as I sat bolt upright on the recliner. Dr. Chen was at my side in an instant, her hand on my shoulder grounding me. Breathe, Emma. Deep breaths. You're safe. You're in my office. It's 2023 and you're an adult. You're safe. Gradually, my breathing slowed and the room came back into focus. I looked at Dr. Chen, tears streaming down my face. Sarah? I choked out. There was an accident. Sarah, she pushed me out of the way. She saved me. Dr. Chen nodded, her eyes full of compassion. You've uncovered a significant memory, Emma. This could be the traumatic event that triggered your dissociative amnesia. I wiped my eyes, my mind reeling. But why would I forget this? Sarah saved my life. Why would my brain want to erase her? The mind works in complex ways, Dr. Chen explained gently. Sometimes the pain of loss is so great that our psyche chooses to protect us by burying the memory entirely. It's not just the traumatic event itself, but all the associated memories and emotions. I sat in silence for a moment, trying to process this revelation. What happens now? I asked finally. Dr. Chen leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. Now, we work on integrating this memory. It won't be easy, Emma. As you remember more, you may experience intense emotions, possibly even more dissociative episodes. But uncovering the root of your trauma is a crucial step in your healing process. She paused, then added, I think it might be helpful for you to visit your hometown, to see if being in familiar surroundings triggers more memories, but only if you feel ready for that. The thought of returning to Salt Lake City, of facing the ghosts of my past, sent a shiver down my spine. But beneath the fear, I felt a glimmer of determination. I think I need to do this, I said slowly. I need to know the truth. All of it. Dr. Chen nodded approvingly. I think that's a wise decision, Emma. But I want you to promise me something. If at any point it becomes too overwhelming, you'll reach out to me immediately, day or night. Can you do that? I nodded, grateful for her support. I promise. As I left Dr. Chen's office that day, I felt as though I was walking in a daze. The world around me seemed both sharper and more surreal, as if the uncovering of this long-buried memory had altered my very perception of reality. I found myself wandering to a nearby park, drawn to the sound of children's laughter. As I sat on a bench, watching kids play on the swings and slides, fragmented memories of Sarah began to surface, her laugh, bright and infectious. The way she always wore her hair in 2 braids. How she could climb to the top of the monkey bars faster than anyone else in our class. Tears welled up in my eyes as I realized how much I had lost, not just in the accident, but in the years of forgotten friendship that followed. My phone buzzed, startling me out of my reverie. It was Lily. Hey, how did it go with Dr. Chen? Her text read. I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. Can you meet me? I need to talk. 20 minutes later, Lily slid onto the bench beside me, 2 cups of steaming coffee in her hands. Here, she said, passing me one. You look like you could use this. I accepted the cup gratefully, wrapping my hands around its warmth. Thanks. Lily waited patiently as I gathered my thoughts. Finally, I took a deep breath and began to recount what had happened in Dr. Chen's office. As I spoke, Lily's eyes widened, her expression a mix of shock and sympathy. Oh, Emma, she said when I finished, pulling me into a tight hug. I'm so sorry, that must have been incredibly difficult to remember. I nodded against her shoulder, allowing myself a moment of vulnerability before pulling back. It was, but it's also a relief in a way. To finally know why. To remember Sarah. Lily squeezed my hand. So what happens now? I took a sip of my coffee, steeling myself. I'm going back to Salt Lake City. Dr. Chen thinks it might help trigger more memories. And I need to find out what happened to Sarah. I need to know if she... I couldn't finish the sentence, but Lily understood. Do you want me to come with you? The offer was tempting, but I shook my head. No, I think this is something I need to do on my own, but thank you. Lily nodded, her expression serious. Just promise me you'll be careful. And call me if you need anything, okay? Anytime, day or night. I promise, I said, managing a small smile. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, I felt a strange mix of emotions churning within me. Fear of what other painful memories might surface, grief for the friend I had lost and then forgotten, but also a growing sense of purpose. For so long I had been adrift, a stranger in my own life. Now for the first time, I had a direction, a mission, to uncover the truth, to reclaim my past, and hopefully, to find a way to honor Sarah's memory. I pulled out my journal, its pages now filled with a mix of entries from my dissociative episodes and my own conscious writings. On a fresh page, I began to write, "Dear Sarah, I'm sorry it's taken me so long to remember you. I'm sorry I forgot your bravery, your friendship, your sacrifice. But I promise you this, I will remember now. I will find out what happened that night, and I will live the life you saved to its fullest. Thank you, my friend, for everything." As I closed the journal, I felt a sense of resolve settling over me. The journey ahead would be difficult, painful even, but I was ready to face it, ready to uncover the past, confront my trauma, and hopefully find a way to heal. Tomorrow, I would book my flight to Salt Lake City. Tomorrow, I would take the first step on this journey into my forgotten past, and whatever I found there, whatever truths were waiting to be uncovered, I would face them head on. For Sarah, for myself, for the life I had yet to fully live. The gentle hum of the airplane engines filled my ears as I stared out the window, watching the landscape below transform from sprawling cities to rugged mountains. My heart raced with a mixture of anticipation and dread as the pilot announced our descent into Salt Lake City International Airport. I clutched my journal tightly, its pages now filled with fragmented memories and questions. The last entry, written hastily in the airport before boarding, stood out starkly. What if I'm not ready for this? What if the truth is worse than not knowing? As the plane touched down with a jolt, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. The familiar skyline of Salt Lake City loomed in the distance, a bittersweet sight that stirred long, dormant emotions within me. After collecting my luggage, I hailed a taxi, giving the driver an address I hadn't spoken aloud in years. 7842 Sycamore Lane, please. The driver nodded, pulling away from the curb. Heading home? He asked conversationally. I swallowed hard. Something like that. As we drove through the city, flashes of memory assaulted me. A park where Sarah and I used to play, the ice cream shop where we'd celebrate the last day of school, the library where we'd spend rainy afternoons. Each familiar sight was like a punch to the gut, bringing with it a flood of emotions I wasn't prepared to handle. Finally, the taxi pulled up in front of a modest, two-story house with a well-manicured lawn, my childhood home. I paid the driver and stepped out, my legs feeling like lead as I approached the front door. Before I could lose my nerve, I rang the doorbell. Moments later, the door swung open, revealing a woman with graying hair and familiar green eyes. My mother. "Emma?" she gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God, Emma!" She pulled me into a tight embrace and I found myself clinging to her, tears welling up in my eyes. "Hi, Mom," I whispered. "John," she called over her shoulder. "John, come quick, Emma's home." My father appeared in the hallway, his face a mix of shock and joy. "Emma? What on earth?" Soon I found myself seated in the living room, a cup of tea growing cold in my hands as my parents looked at me with a mixture of concern and confusion. "Sweetheart," my mother began gently, "not that we're not thrilled to see you, but why didn't you tell us you were coming?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. "Mom, Dad, there's something I need to talk to you about, something important." My father leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "What is it, Emma? Are you in some kind of trouble?" I shook my head. No, not exactly. It's about Sarah. The room fell silent. My mother's face paled and my father's expression hardened. They exchanged a look that spoke volumes. Emma, my mother said softly, we haven't talked about Sarah in years. Not since the accident. I finished for her. That's just it. I didn't remember any of it until recently. Over the next hour, I explained everything. The dissociative amnesia, the therapy, the recovered memories. My parents listened in stunned silence, occasionally exchanging worried glances. When I finished, my father cleared his throat. Emma, we had no idea. All these years we thought you were coping, that you'd processed what happened. Why didn't you tell us you were struggling? I felt a flash of frustration. I didn't know I was struggling, Dad. I didn't remember there was anything to struggle with. My mind just erased it all. My mother reached out, taking my hand in hers. Oh, sweetheart, we should have seen the signs. We should have done more to help you. I squeezed her hand. It's not your fault, Mom. I hid it well, even from myself. But now I need to know everything. About that night, about Sarah. I need to understand what happened. My parents exchanged another look, this one heavy with unspoken pain. Finally, my father nodded. All right, Emma. You deserve to know the truth. That night, when Sarah's mother was late picking you up from the park, you two decided to walk home. It was getting dark, and the road, it didn't have great visibility. My mother continued, her voice quavering. A car came around the bend too fast. The driver, he'd been drinking. Sarah saw it coming first. She pushed you out of the way, into the ditch beside the road. But she didn't have time to. She didn't make it, I whispered, the words feeling like glass in my throat. My father nodded solemnly. It was instantaneous. She didn't suffer. But you saw it all happen. You were in shock when we found you. You kept saying it should have been you, that Sarah saved you. Tears streamed down my face as the full weight of the memory crashed over me. And after the funeral? What happened then? You shut down, my mother said softly. You wouldn't talk about Sarah, wouldn't look at pictures of her. The therapist said you were repressing the trauma, that we shouldn't push you. We thought you were healing in your own way. I stood up abruptly, needing to move, to do something with the overwhelming emotions coursing through me. I need some air, I muttered, heading for the front door. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the neighborhood. Without conscious thought, my feet carried me down the familiar streets, retracing a path I must have walked 1,000 times as a child. I found myself standing in front of a modest house with blue shutters and a tire swing hanging from a large oak tree in the front yard. Sarah's house. My heart pounded as I approached the front door, my hand shaking as I rang the doorbell. A middle-aged woman answered, her eyes widening in recognition. Emma Lawson? Is that you? I nodded, my throat tight. Hi, Mrs. Collins. I'm sorry to drop by unannounced. I was hoping we could talk. About Sarah. Mrs. Collins's face softened with a mixture of sadness and understanding. She stepped aside, gesturing for me to enter. Of course, dear. Come in. The inside of the house was like stepping back in time. Photos of Sarah adorned the walls. Sarah as a toddler, Sarah on her first day of school, Sarah and me at our 8th birthday party, arms thrown around each other, grinning widely. Mrs. Collins led me to the living room where we sat on a floral-patterned couch. It's been a long time, Emma, she said gently. How are you doing? I took a deep breath, deciding honesty was the best approach. I'm struggling, Mrs. Collins. For years, I forgot about Sarah, about the accident. My mind blocked it all out. But now I'm remembering, and I needed to come back. To understand. To apologize. Mrs. Collins reached out, taking my hand in hers. Oh, Emma, there's nothing to apologize for. Sarah loved you like a sister. What she did, it was instinctive. She would have done it 1,000 times over. Tears spilled down my cheeks. But it should have been me. If I had been faster, if I had seen the car first. Stop, Mrs. Collins said firmly. You can't think like that. Sarah made a choice in that moment, a brave, selfless choice. The only way to honor that is to live your life to the fullest. She stood up, crossing to a bookshelf and retrieving a small box. I've been waiting for the right time to give you this, she said, placing the box in my hands. Sarah made it for your birthday. She never got the chance to give it to you. With trembling hands, I opened the box. Inside was a friendship bracelet, intricately woven with vibrant threads. A small charm dangled from it, half of a heart that read, Best. Mrs. Collins held up her wrist, revealing a matching bracelet with the other half of the heart charm, reading, Friends. She was so excited to give it to you, Mrs. Collins said softly. She said it was a symbol that no matter where life took you both, you'd always be connected. I slipped the bracelet onto my wrist, a sob escaping my lips. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you for keeping this, for keeping her memory alive when I couldn't. As I left Sarah's house, the weight of the bracelet on my wrist felt like both a comfort and a responsibility. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, the kind of sunset Sarah and I used to admire together. I made my way to a small park near our old elementary school, sitting on a swing as the day's events washed over me. The truth was painful, yes, but it was also freeing. For the first time in years, I felt truly connected to my past, to the friend I had lost and the life I had lived. Pulling out my journal, I began to write, pouring out my feelings, my memories, my hopes for the future. As I wrote, I felt a sense of peace settling over me. The journey wasn't over. There was still much healing to be done. But I had taken the first crucial steps. As darkness fell, I looked up at the stars twinkling in the night sky. I remember now, Sarah, I whispered. And I promise I won't forget again. Thank you for the gift of life. I'll make it count, for both of us. With a deep breath, I stood up, ready to return to my parents' house. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new memories to process. But for now, I felt grounded in the present, connected to my past, and cautiously optimistic about the future. The bracelet glinted in the moonlight as I walked home, a tangible reminder of the friendship that had shaped me, the tragedy that had broken me, and the strength I was rediscovering within myself. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of my childhood bedroom, casting a warm glow on the faded posters and dusty shelves. I sat on the edge of the bed, Sarah's friendship bracelet glinting on my wrist, as I flipped through an old photo album my mother had unearthed from the attic. Each picture was like a jolt to my system. Sarah and I at the school talent show, dressed as mismatched twins, building a lopsided snowman in my backyard, blowing out candles on a shared birthday cake. Memories flooded back, bittersweet and overwhelming. A soft knock on the door pulled me from my reverie. Emma, my mother's voice called. Are you up for a visitor? Lily's here. I blinked in surprise. Lily. But I didn't tell her I was here. The door opened, revealing my best friend's worried face. You didn't have to, Lily said, rushing in to envelop me in a tight hug. Dr. Chen called me. She was concerned when you missed your check-in call yesterday. Guilt washed over me as I returned the embrace. I'm sorry, I got so caught up in everything I completely forgot. Lily pulled back, her eyes scanning my face. Are you okay? How are you holding up? I gestured to the photo album. It's intense. Every memory that comes back feels like reliving it for the first time. But I'm glad I came. I needed this. Lily sat beside me, picking up the album. Tell me about her, she said softly. Tell me about Sarah. For the next hour, I shared stories about Sarah, her infectious laugh, her terrible jokes, her unwavering loyalty. Lily listened intently, offering a supportive hand on my shoulder when the memories became too much. She sounds amazing, Lily said when I finally fell silent. I wish I could have known her. I nodded, wiping away a stray tear. Me too. You two would have gotten along great. Lily squeezed my hand. So what's next? Are you ready to go back home? I shook my head. Not yet. There's somewhere I need to go first. Will you come with me? 20 minutes later, we stood at the gates of Wasatch Lawn Memorial Park, the sprawling cemetery where Sarah was buried. My steps faltered as we made our way through the rows of headstones. I don't know if I can do this, I whispered, fear gripping my heart. Lily linked her arm through mine. You can. I'm right here with you. We found Sarah's grave near a large oak tree. The headstone was simple yet beautiful, engraved with her name, dates, and the words, "Beloved daughter and friend, her light will shine forever." As I knelt before the grave, tracing the letters of Sarah's name with trembling fingers, a wave of emotion crashed over me. Memories of the funeral, which I had suppressed for so long, came rushing back. I remember now, I choked out, tears streaming down my face. I remember standing here watching them lower her casket. I remember thinking it should have been me. I remember wishing I could forget it all. Lily knelt beside me, her arm around my shoulders. And your mind granted that wish. I nodded, a sob escaping my lips. But at what cost? I forgot her, Lily. I forgot everything about her. What kind of friend does that make me? A human one, a voice said from behind us. We turned to see Mrs. Collins approaching, a bouquet of sunflowers, Sarah's favorite, in her arms. Mrs. Collins, I stammered, hastily wiping my eyes. I didn't expect to see you here. She smiled sadly. I come every Saturday. Some habits are hard to break. She placed the flowers on the grave, then turned to me. Emma, dear, you can't blame yourself for how your mind chose to cope with trauma. Sarah wouldn't want that. I stood up, my legs shaky. But I abandoned her memory. I left Salt Lake City and never looked back. I didn't even remember why I was running. Mrs. Collins took my hands in hers. You were a child, Emma. A child who experienced something no one should ever have to. The fact that you're here now, confronting your past, shows incredible strength. Lily nodded in agreement. She's right, Em. You're not that scared little girl anymore. You're facing this head on. I looked between them, feeling a surge of gratitude for their support. I want to make it right. I want to honor Sarah's memory properly. Mrs. Collins's eyes lit up. Actually, there might be a way you can do that. Come with me. Curious, Lily and I followed Mrs. Collins to her car. She drove us to a small community center on the outskirts of the city. A sign out front read, Sarah's Sunflowers Youth Mentorship Program. What is this place? I asked as we walked inside. Mrs. Collins beamed with pride. After Sarah died, I needed a way to keep her spirit alive. So I started this program. We pair at-risk youth with mentors, helping them find their path in life. Sarah always had a way of bringing out the best in people, especially those who were struggling. I wanted to continue that legacy. We entered a large room filled with teenagers and adults engaged in various activities, art projects, tutoring sessions, even a small group practicing yoga in the corner. A young girl, no more than 14, approached us shyly. Mrs. Collins? I finished my college application essay. Would you mind looking it over? Of course, dear, Mrs. Collins said warmly. Oh, Mia, I'd like you to meet someone special. This is Emma, Sarah's best friend. Mia's eyes widened. The Emma? From all the stories? I blinked in surprise. Stories? Mrs. Collins chuckled. Oh yes, I've told these kids all about Sarah and her adventures with you. You're quite the legend around here. Overwhelmed, I looked around the room, taking in the vibrant energy and the clear impact this place was having on these young lives. This is incredible. Sarah would have loved this. Mrs. Collins nodded. I like to think she's here in spirit guiding us. Emma, I know you're not living in Salt Lake City anymore, but if you'd ever like to get involved, maybe share some of your own experiences." "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Absolutely yes. I'd be honored." For the next few hours, I immersed myself in the world of Sarah's sunflowers. I shared stories about Sarah with eager listeners, helped a young boy with his math homework, and even joined in on an impromptu dance session. As the day wound down, I found myself sitting with Lily and Mrs. Collins in the now quiet center. "Thank you for showing me this," I said, my voice thick with emotion. It's like a piece of Sarah is still here, still making a difference." Mrs. Collins patted my hand. "She is, through all of us. And now through you again, too." Lily, who had been quiet for a while, spoke up. "You know, Em, I had an idea. What if we set up a satellite program back home? We could partner with Sarah's sunflowers, maybe do some virtual mentoring sessions. It could be a way for you to stay connected." The idea sent a thrill of excitement through me. That's brilliant, Lily." "Mrs. Collins, what do you think?" Mrs. Collins's eyes welled with tears. "I think Sarah would be over the moon. She always said you two could change the world together. Looks like you still can." As we left the center, the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. I paused, looking back at the building that now held so much meaning. "I remember now," I said softly, "why Sarah was so special. It wasn't just that she saved my life that day. She was saving me every day, just by being my friend. And now, through this, she's still saving people." Lily wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "And you're helping her do it. So, what's next?" I took a deep breath, feeling more centered than I had in years. "Next, we go home. We start planning, and we keep Sarah's legacy alive." As we drove back to my parents' house, I felt a shift within me. The pain of remembering was still there, but alongside it was a sense of purpose, of healing. I had come to Salt Lake City seeking answers about my past. I was leaving with a mission for my future. That night, as I lay in bed, I pulled out my journal and began to write. "Dear Sarah, I remember now. I remember everything, the good, the bad, the heartbreaking. But most of all, I remember your light. And I promise you, I'm going to keep that light shining. Not just for you, but for all the kids out there who need it. You saved me in more ways than one. Now it's my turn to pay it forward. Thank you for being my best friend. Thank you for showing me the way. Love always, Emma." I closed the journal, my heart full of a bittersweet mix of grief and hope. Tomorrow, I would return home, armed with memories, purpose, and a plan. The journey of healing was far from over, but for the first time, I felt truly equipped to face it. As I drifted off to sleep, I could almost hear Sarah's laughter on the wind, cheering me on towards a future bright with possibility. The familiar walls of Dr. Chen's office seemed different somehow as I settled into the comfortable armchair. Perhaps it was me who had changed. 2 weeks had passed since my trip to Salt Lake City, and I felt as though I'd lived a lifetime in those days. Dr. Chen studied me intently, her pen poised over her notepad. "Welcome back, Emma. How are you feeling after your journey home?" I took a deep breath, considering the question. "Overwhelmed," I admitted, "but also lighter, in a way. Like I've been carrying this weight for so long without realizing it, and now I can finally set it down." Dr. Chen nodded encouragingly. "That's a very insightful observation. Can you tell me more about what you experienced in Salt Lake City?" For the next hour, I recounted my trip in detail, the flood of memories, the conversations with my parents and Mrs. Collins, the visit to Sarah's grave, and the discovery of Sarah's sunflowers. Dr. Chen listened attentively, occasionally jotting down notes. "It sounds like you've made significant progress in integrating your past experiences," she said when I finished. "How do you feel about Sarah now?" I fingered the friendship bracelet on my wrist, a habit I'd developed since receiving it. I feel connected to her again. The pain of losing her is still there, but it's not overwhelming anymore. It's like I can hold the joy of our friendship and the sorrow of her loss at the same time. Dr. Chen smiled warmly. That's a beautiful way to put it, Emma. It's a sign of healthy grief processing. Now I'd like to try something different today. Are you familiar with the concept of chair work? I shook my head, curiosity piqued. It's a therapeutic technique where we use empty chairs to represent different aspects of ourselves or important figures in our lives, Dr. Chen explained, gesturing to 2 chairs she'd set up facing each other. I'd like you to have a conversation with Sarah. My heart rate quickened. But she's not here. Imagine she is, Dr. Chen said gently. This is about giving voice to the things you wish you could say to her and perhaps hearing what you think she might say in return. Are you willing to try? After a moment's hesitation, I nodded. Okay, I'll try. I moved to one of the chairs, facing the empty one. Dr. Chen's voice guided me. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Imagine Sarah sitting across from you. When you're ready, open your eyes and speak to her. I did as instructed, and when I opened my eyes, I could almost see Sarah there. Her bright smile, her mischievous eyes, her hair in its trademark braids. Sarah, I began, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I forgot you. I'm sorry I ran away from your memory. I paused, emotion welling up in my throat. Dr. Chen encouraged me to continue. I wish you were still here. I wish we could have grown up together, gone to college together, been in each other's weddings. I wish. My voice broke. I wish it had been me instead of you. Dr. Chen's voice was soft but firm. Now, Emma, I want you to switch chairs. Become Sarah. What would she say to you? I moved to the other chair, closing my eyes briefly to channel Sarah's energy, her boundless optimism, her fierce loyalty. When I spoke, my voice was stronger, tinged with Sarah's characteristic warmth. Oh, Emma, you goose. Don't you dare wish that. I saved you because I wanted you to live, to thrive. I'm not sorry for what I did, and you shouldn't be either. Tears streamed down my face as I continued in Sarah's voice. I'm proud of you, Em. You've been through so much, but you're still fighting. You're still here. And now you're helping other kids, just like we always talked about. That's all I ever wanted. Dr. Chen nodded encouragingly. Good, Emma. Now switch back. What do you want to say to Sarah in response? I moved back to the first chair, wiping my eyes. Sarah, I miss you. Every day. But I'm trying to live the life you gave me. I'm trying to make it count. The session continued, with me switching between chairs, giving voice to my guilt, my grief, my love for Sarah, and her imagined responses of forgiveness, encouragement, and enduring friendship. By the end, I felt emotionally drained but oddly peaceful. Dr. Chen handed me a tissue, her eyes warm with approval. That was excellent work, Emma. How do you feel? I took a shaky breath. Raw, exposed, but also heard. Like I finally got to have the conversation I've needed for years. Dr. Chen nodded. This is an important step in your healing process. You're integrating your memories of Sarah, your love for her, and your grief into your current self. It's not about forgetting or getting over your loss, but about finding a way to carry Sarah with you in a healthy way. As I left Dr. Chen's office that day, I felt a shift within me. The memories of Sarah no longer felt like a burden or a source of pain. Instead, they were a wellspring of strength, a reminder of the love and friendship that had shaped me. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into the project of extending Sarah's sunflowers to our local community. Lily and I spent countless hours video conferencing with Mrs. Collins, planning logistics, and reaching out to local schools and community centers. One evening, as Lily and I sat surrounded by paperwork in my living room, she looked up at me with a mix of admiration and concern. Em, this is amazing what you're doing, but are you sure you're not pushing yourself too hard? You've been through a lot. I set down the grant proposal I'd been working on, considering her words. I know it might seem that way, but honestly, Lily, this is helping me. Every time I talk about Sarah, every time I share her story with these kids, it's like I'm rebuilding my connection with her. Does that make sense? Lily reached out, squeezing my hand. It does. I just want to make sure you're taking care of yourself too. I smiled, touched by her concern. I am. Promise, in fact, I hesitated, then plunged ahead. I've been thinking about something. I want to go back to school, to become a counselor. Lily's eyes widened. Really? Emma, that's fantastic. But what about your job at the marketing firm? I shrugged. I'll keep working there while I study. It'll be tough, but I feel like this is what I'm meant to do, you know? To help kids who are struggling, like Sarah did for me, like Mrs. Collins is doing with Sarah's sunflowers. Lily beamed at me. I think it's perfect. Sarah would be so proud of you. The next day, I found myself standing in front of a group of teenagers at our local community center. It was the first official meeting of our Sarah's Sunflowers satellite program. Hi everyone, I began, my voice shaky with nerves. My name is Emma, and I want to tell you about my best friend, Sarah. As I shared Sarah's story, our friendship, her sacrifice, and the impact she continued to have through Sarah's sunflowers, I watched the teens' faces. Some looked skeptical, others curious, and a few seemed to be holding back tears. The thing is, I continued, gaining confidence, Sarah taught me that we all have the power to make a difference in someone's life. Sometimes it's through a grand gesture like what she did for me, but more often it's through small acts of kindness, through being there for someone when they need it most. I held up my wrist, showing them Sarah's bracelet. This is a reminder for me, a reminder to live the life Sarah saved, to pass on the love and support she gave me. And that's what this program is about. It's about creating a chain of kindness and support, from Sarah to me, from me to you, and from you to others. As the meeting progressed, I watched in awe as the teens began to open up, sharing their own stories of struggle and resilience. By the end of the session, there was a palpable sense of connection in the room. That night, as I wrote in my journal, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. The entry flowed from my pen. Dear Sarah, today, I felt you with me more strongly than ever. As I shared our story, as I watched these kids begin to connect and support each other, I could almost hear your laughter, could almost see your proud smile. I'm beginning to understand now. You're not just a memory, not just a tragic story from my past. You're a part of me, a guiding light showing me the way forward. And through this work, through the lives we'll touch together, you'll live on. I'm not running from the pain anymore. I'm using it, transforming it into something beautiful, just like you always did. Thank you, my friend, for everything. For your life, for your sacrifice, for the legacy you've left behind. I promise to nurture it, to help it grow, always and forever. Emma. As I closed the journal, I felt a sense of wholeness I hadn't experienced in years. The journey of healing was far from over, but for the first time I felt truly integrated. My past, present, and future aligning in a way that felt right, felt purposeful. Sarah was with me, not as a ghost or a painful memory, but as an integral part of who I was and who I was becoming. And together, we would continue to make a difference, one sunflower at a time. The autumn leaves crunched beneath my feet as I made my way across the university campus. The crisp air filled my lungs, invigorating me despite the early hour. It had been 6 months since I'd started my journey to become a counselor, and every day brought new challenges and insights. As I entered the lecture hall for my trauma and recovery class, I caught sight of my study group waving me over. I smiled, still marveling at how quickly I'd formed connections here, how natural it felt to be back in an academic setting. Emma! called out Jenna, a fellow student with a shock of purple hair. "We saved you a seat. Ready for today's presentation?" I nodded, settling into the chair beside her. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, trying to quell the butterflies in my stomach. Today was a big day. For our midterm project, we had to present a case study on trauma recovery. I had chosen to share my own story, a decision that both terrified and excited me. As the professor called the class to order, I took a deep breath, centering myself. When my name was called, I made my way to the front of the room, my hands only slightly shaking as I set up my presentation. "Good morning, everyone," I began, my voice steadier than I expected. "Today, I'd like to talk about dissociative amnesia and the long-term effects of childhood trauma." For the next 20 minutes, I shared my story, the accident, the years of forgotten memories, the process of recovering and integrating my past. I talked about Sarah, about the guilt and grief I'd carried unknowingly for so long, and I shared how I'd found healing through therapy, through reconnecting with my past, and through the work with Sarah's sunflowers. As I concluded, I looked out at my classmates, seeing a mix of emotions on their faces: empathy, admiration, and deep thought. "The journey of trauma recovery isn't linear," I said. "It's ongoing. Every day I'm learning to integrate my past experiences into my present self. And I've found that helping others, sharing my story, has become a crucial part of my healing process." The applause that followed was warm and genuine. As I returned to my seat, several classmates reached out to squeeze my arm or pat my back in support. After class, my professor, Dr. Harriet Simmons, asked me to stay behind. "Emma," she said, her eyes twinkling behind her glasses, "that was an exceptional presentation. Your ability to articulate your experiences and link them to the theories we've been studying is remarkable." I felt a flush of pride at her words. "Thank you, Dr. Simmons, it means a lot to hear that." She leaned against her desk, regarding me thoughtfully. "Have you considered where you might want to do your practicum next semester?" I shook my head. "Not really. I've been so focused on coursework, I haven't thought that far ahead." Dr. Simmons smiled. "Well, I have a proposition for you. I'm starting a research project on innovative therapies for childhood trauma survivors. Given your personal experience and your excellent academic performance, I think you'd be a valuable addition to the team. It would count as your practicum, and it might open up some interesting opportunities for you down the line." My heart raced with excitement. "Dr. Simmons, that sounds incredible. I'd be honored to be part of it." "Wonderful," she beamed. "We'll start next month. In the meantime, keep up the excellent work." As I left the building, I felt a lightness in my step. My phone buzzed with a text from Lily. "How'd the presentation go? Still on for dinner tonight?" I quickly replied, "It went great. Big news to share. See you at 7. That evening, as Lily and I settled into our favorite booth at the local diner, I couldn't contain my excitement any longer. "So," Lily said, eyeing me over her menu, "Spill. What's this big news?" I recounted the day's events, the presentation, Dr. Simmons' praise, and the offer to join the research project. Lily's face lit up with pride. "Emma, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you. You've come so far in just a few months." I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. "I have. And you know what? For the first time in, well, maybe ever, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Lily reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "You are. And Sarah would be so proud of you, too." At the mention of Sarah's name, I felt a familiar pang in my chest. But it wasn't the sharp pain of grief anymore. It was a softer feeling, a bittersweet mix of love and loss. "I think about her every day," I admitted. "But it's different now. It's like she's with me, guiding me." Lily nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "She is. Through you, through the work you're doing with Sarah's sunflowers, you're keeping her spirit alive." As we ate our dinner, Conversation flowed easily between us. We talked about my studies, about the latest developments with Sarah's sunflowers, about Lily's job and her budding romance with a coworker. Halfway through the meal, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mrs. Collins. Just wanted to let you know, we had 3 of our sunflowers get college acceptance letters today. Your virtual mentoring sessions made a real difference. Sarah would be over the moon. Thank you, Emma. I showed the text to Lily, my heart swelling with emotion. It's really happening, I said softly. We're really making a difference. Lily raised her glass in a toast. To Sarah, she said, and to you, Emma, for turning pain into purpose. Later that night, as I sat at my desk preparing for the next day's classes, my eyes fell on the framed photo of Sarah and me that now held a place of honor next to my computer. In it, we were about 7 years old, arms thrown around each other, gap-toothed grins beaming at the camera. I picked up the frame, tracing Sarah's face with my finger. We did it, Sarah, I whispered. We're changing the world, just like we always said we would. Turning to my journal, I began to write. Dear Sarah, today was a big day. I shared our story with my class, and it felt right. Like each time I talk about you, about us, I'm honoring your memory in the best way I can. I'm learning so much, Sarah. About trauma, about healing, about the incredible resilience of the human spirit. And I'm learning about myself, too. I'm stronger than I ever knew, and a lot of that strength comes from you. Sometimes I wonder what you'd be doing if you were here. Would you be in college, too? Would we be roommates, staying up late to cram for exams and talk about boys? But then I realize, you are here, in a way. You're in every choice I make, every life I touch through our work with Sarah's sunflowers. I used to think that accepting what happened meant letting you go, but now I understand. Acceptance isn't about forgetting or moving on. It's about integrating our past into our present, about letting our experiences shape us without defining us. I accept now that you're gone, that our time together was cut short, but I also accept the incredible gift you gave me, not just my life, but a purpose, a calling. I'm growing, Sarah. Every day I'm becoming more of the person you always saw in me, and I promise I'll keep growing, keep learning, keep helping others in your name. Thank you for being my guiding star, my best friend, my guardian angel. Love always, Emma. As I closed the journal, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The road ahead was still long with challenges I couldn't yet foresee, but for the first time in years I felt truly whole, truly myself. I was Emma Lawson, survivor, student, mentor, friend. I carried Sarah with me, not as a burden, but as a source of strength and inspiration. And together, we would continue to spread light in the world, one sunflower at a time. With a contented sigh, I turned off my desk lamp and headed to bed. Tomorrow was a new day, full of possibilities and opportunities to grow, to learn, to make a difference. And I was ready to face it, with Sarah's memory in my heart and her bracelet on my wrist, reminding me always of the power of friendship, the strength of the human spirit, and the endless potential for healing and growth. The auditorium buzzed with anticipation as people filed in, filling the rows of seats. I stood backstage, my heart pounding, fingers nervously fiddling with the friendship bracelet on my wrist. 1 year had passed since I'd found that mysterious journal, since I'd begun the journey of recovering my memories and rebuilding my life. Now, here I was, about to address a crowd of hundreds at the first national conference for Sarah's sunflowers. The organization had grown beyond our wildest dreams, with chapters sprouting up in cities across the country. Lily appeared at my side, giving my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. You've got this, Em. Just speak from your heart. I nodded, taking a deep breath. I just hope I can do Sarah justice. You already have, a familiar voice said. I turned to see Mrs. Collins approaching, her eyes shining with pride. Sarah would be so proud of you, Emma, of all of us. Before I could respond, the MC's voice boomed through the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, Please welcome to the stage the co-founder of Sarah's Sunflowers, Emma Lawson. With one last deep breath, I stepped out onto the stage, blinking against the bright lights. The applause washed over me as I made my way to the podium, my nervousness giving way to a sense of purpose. "Good evening, everyone," I began, my voice steady and clear. "Thank you all for being here tonight. A year ago, I stood in front of a small group of teenagers in a community center, sharing the story of my best friend, Sarah. I had no idea then how that moment would change my life and the lives of so many others. As I spoke, I saw faces in the audience nodding, some wiping away tears. I shared the story of Sarah, of our friendship, of the tragic accident that took her life and buried my memories. I talked about the journey of rediscovery, of healing, and of finding purpose in pain. Sarah's Sunflowers isn't just an organization, I continued, my voice growing stronger. It's a movement, a belief that every child deserves a chance to bloom, no matter their circumstances. It's a testament to the power of friendship, of mentorship, of community. I gestured to the side of the stage where a group of teenagers stood waiting. "I'd like to introduce you to some of our sunflowers. These amazing young people have overcome incredible obstacles, and now they're paying it forward, becoming mentors themselves." One by one, the teens stepped forward, sharing their stories of struggle and triumph. There was Miguel, who had gone from gang involvement to college acceptance. Aisha, who had overcome homelessness to become a budding entrepreneur. And Tyler, whose battle with depression had led him to become a mental health advocate. As the last teen finished speaking, I felt a lump form in my throat. "This," I said, gesturing to the group, "this is Sarah's legacy. This is what one act of kindness, one act of friendship, can spark." I paused, looking out at the sea of faces. I stand here today not just as a co-founder or a spokesperson, but as living proof of the difference one person can make in someone's life. Sarah saved me, not just on that tragic day, but every day of our friendship. And now, through all of you, through every life touched by Sarah's Sunflowers, she continues to save people. As I concluded my speech, the auditorium erupted in applause. I felt a wave of emotion wash over me. Grief for Sarah, pride in what we'd accomplished, and an overwhelming sense of purpose. After the ceremony, as people mingled and chatted, I found a quiet corner to catch my breath. Dr. Chen approached, a warm smile on her face. "Emma," she said, enveloping me in a hug. "That was truly inspiring. How are you feeling?" I considered the question, realizing with some surprise that I felt whole. "I feel good, Dr. Chen. Really good. Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." She nodded approvingly. "You've come so far, Emma. Your journey of healing, of integration. It's remarkable. I couldn't have done it without your help," I said sincerely. Dr. Chen shook her head. "I merely guided you. The strength, the resilience. That was all you. And Sarah." As we talked, I saw a young girl hovering nearby, clearly wanting to approach but too shy to interrupt. I smiled at her encouragingly. "Hi there," I said. "What's your name?" "Zoe," she replied softly. I just wanted to say thank you. Your story, it helped me. I lost my best friend last year, and I've been struggling. But hearing you talk about Sarah, about turning grief into something positive, it gave me hope." I felt my heart swell with emotion. Kneeling down to Zoe's level, I took her hand in mine. "Zoe, I'm so sorry for your loss. I know how much it hurts, but I want you to know something. Your friends' love for you, your love for them, it doesn't end. It transforms, and you can use that love to do amazing things." Zoe nodded, tears in her eyes but a small smile on her face. Maybe I could start a Sarah's Sunflowers chapter at my school." "I think that's a wonderful idea," I said, feeling a surge of pride and hope. "And we'll be here to support you every step of the way." As Zoe walked away, visibly uplifted, Lily appeared at my side. "Look at you," she said, nudging me playfully. "Changing lives, one conversation at a time." I laughed, feeling a lightness in my heart. "It's surreal, Lily. A year ago, I was lost, confused, running from my past. And now you're helping others find their way. Lily finished for me. It's amazing, Em. You're amazing. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations, hugs, and shared stories. As the crowd began to thin, I found myself standing with Mrs. Collins, looking out over the now quiet auditorium. You know, Mrs. Collins said softly, when I started Sarah's Sunflowers, I thought it was a way to keep my daughter's memory alive. But it's become so much more than that. It's become a way to continue her work, her spirit of kindness and hope, and I nodded, feeling a deep connection to this woman who had become like a second mother to me. I feel her with us, I admitted, in every life we touch, in every sunflower that blooms. It's like she's still here, still making a difference. Mrs. Collins wrapped an arm around my shoulders. She is, Emma. Through you, through all of this, you've given her story wings. As the night drew to a close, I found myself alone on the stage, looking out at the empty seats. In my mind's eye, I could see Sarah standing beside me, her infectious grin lighting up her face. We did it, Sarah, I whispered. We're changing the world, just like we always said we would. I could almost hear her response, carried on the quiet air of the auditorium. We're just getting started, Em. Just getting started. Later that night, in the quiet of my hotel room, I opened my journal one last time. The pages were filled now, a year's worth of healing, growth, and transformation captured in ink. I turned to a fresh page and began to write. Dear Sarah, today marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. As I stood on that stage, sharing our story, I felt you with me more strongly than ever. Not as a ghost or a memory, but as a living force, a guiding light. A year ago I was lost, running from a past I couldn't remember. Now, I stand firmly in the present, eyes fixed on a future bright with possibility. And it's all because of you. You saved my life twice, Sarah, once on that tragic day, and again by leaving behind a legacy that gave me purpose. Through Sarah's Sunflowers, we're touching lives, spreading hope, creating a chain of kindness that ripples out farther than we could have ever imagined. I used to think that healing meant forgetting, that moving forward meant leaving you behind. But now I understand. You're not my past, Sarah. You're my present. You're in every life we touch, every sunflower that blooms. I'm not running anymore. I'm not hiding. I'm living, fully and completely, carrying your light with me always. Thank you, my friend, my guardian angel, my guiding star, for everything. Love, now and always, Emma. As I closed the journal, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. The journey of the past year had been challenging, painful at times, but ultimately transformative. I had faced my past, integrated my memories, and found a way to honor Sarah's memory that felt true and right. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to grow and make a difference. But for the first time in years, I felt ready to face whatever came my way. With Sarah's memory in my heart, her bracelet on my wrist, and the strength I'd discovered within myself, I was ready to write the next chapter of my story. A story of healing, of hope, of the enduring power of friendship. A story that, like a sunflower turning its face to the sun, would always reach for the light, reach for the